have presidents, etc., on. But his show took a real dip when he allowed his wife to be a part of the show, and other stuff. The cleaning stuff was cool, how to have cleaning stuff without bad chemicals in it. But she got Imus to use his political clout to get senators to bring stuff before that was not based on science, to try and put stuff into committee. Just embarrassed the poor guy. So look, he was a brilliant guy, but some of us can't always listen to the spouse. Especially if they're like religious to the point of being insane or an anti-vax. Okay, let us continue. Where was I? Got to stop this. Got to ease up on this. But it just gets me nuts that people are going to die because folks don't like science. Okay, I got more. Okay. Medics are grappling with the mental trauma. Maybe that's what I'm suffering from this morning. It's a possibility. You never know. A veteran emergency room physician in Detroit knew something was wrong when she developed insomnia and became unusually irritated with people she loved. What they're seeing is with medics, particularly, a lot. Now, we've seen a couple of suicides already, a lot of post traumatic stress disorder, a lot of anger, and a lot of people. I don't know if this quote on the article that was put out by Reuters, that it's never going to be the same. It always feels that way when you're depressed. But people are going to carry this with them, some people for a long time. Yes, that's true. And I think what we haven't said enough is its effects on children. We see the world, and there are very few children who listen to this program, I'm sure. We see the world through adult eyes. And even the 40ish among us, the 30ish, we've lived through 9/11. Those of us of older, we lived through the Cold War, which was petrifying. We lived through lesser plagues, if you will. We've lived through and the generation that is now leaving us lived through World War II, Watergate, and the loss of confidence. And for those of you who weren't around then, it really was a big deal. Certainly, the Vietnam War tore the country apart and really started the divisiveness that seems to be peaking at this point, when we have people who wanted to be loyal to the government even as it lied to us, and many of us wanted to be loyal even as it lied to us, myself included. Until more and more you grow up and you realize that they shouldn't be lying to us as a matter of course, but they do, and they did. And people died. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution, for those of you who were just reading it in a history book, a very fine president, Lyndon Johnson, lied to the American people and said that a boat was attacked when it wasn't because he wanted to appear tough. We got to worry about the ego of these men? Really? Anyway, that for another day. The point being that we've lived through a lot. But when you see the effect that had on children, when you see the effect that the Vietnam War even had on teenagers, when they realized that it was not a just war or thought it wasn't, they didn't have the same patriotism that they used to have anymore. The children, and I was one of them, that lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis, left an indelible scar. We were hiding under our desks, for God's sakes, and we thought the world was going to end any day. And even we didn't live through them. I remember when we had the chicken pox plague, I call it a plague, when it hit our town in Brooklyn, the part of Brooklyn where I live, we were all home with the chicken pox. I remember it forever. We were all home with the mumps. We were all home with the flu. I was home the day that an airliner was about 100 foot over my house and crashed a mile away in Brooklyn. We remember all these things. And none of them really, I'm fine today, but they were PTSD things at the time. Not so much for me, but I remember them. And I know a lot of people were really upset by them. Imagine our kids now. They can't go out of the house. Plus, half of them have wacky parents that say, "Go, boogeyman's going to get you if you don't do your homework." Anyway, I digress. We are really going to have to keep an eye on our kids, because this is different than anything we've ever been through. But anyway, that's my little spiel about mental illness as we now pass through 7/11. This is kind of nice. Oh, by the way, Apple's going to open some U.S. stores next week with new social distancing rules. You know what I want Apple to do? Let me just get rid of one of my other picadillos while I'm. Or, I don't know if it's picadillo wouldn't be the right word, but one of the things that annoys me when you go in a store like that. I mean, forget it's not as bad as a car dealership, which I love to throw bricks at, and they'll probably never sponsor me unless they want to be the ones that are different. Then they can sponsor me, and I'll talk about it. You got rich people that own it, nice suits, nice commercials, well spoken. Even the ones that kind of have like a lot of pinky rings are well spoken, nice clothes, whoever they are, top level people, leaders. And then they hire functional morons, guys that match a suit jacket with jeans, a red tie with a yellow shirt, an unkept beard, and talk to you like you're on 42nd Street and they're selling you a watch. Well, at least we all know that when you go to buy a car, they're trying to rip you off. And their stupidity is open for you to see. But when you go in the Apple store, you shouldn't know more than these people. Or when you go like in the T-Mobile store, waste of time. I left T-Mobile. I loved the service, but I left T-Mobile because the people that they hired needed new brains. Anyway, and that's the go to open an Apple store, but just hire smart people, please. You want to pay them garbage, and you know we used to say on Wall Street, when you pay peanuts, you get elephants. And I don't mean it as the size, but or monkeys. That's the intellect you get. All righty, I got that out of my case. Here's a nice story. A rural pub owner in Ireland has come up with an ingenious way to keep her bar open during the lockdown. Avril McKeever, who owns the 152-year-old institution, has been serving her loyal customers bottles of beer and bag of potato chips via drone. Now that's pretty cool. You have a ball game on from 10 years ago. You call up and a drone putters outside the house. Oh, they don't really do that. Kind of buzz and hum. It hums right down to you, and it gives you a beer, and it gives you pretzels. I like that idea. Okay, now here's one I didn't know. Did you know that not every state in the union banned child marriages? Pennsylvania just became the third state to ban child marriage. Only Delaware and New Jersey have also banned child marriages. I didn't know that. I'm going to research that a little more on the web when we go to break. I did not know that. Did you? And what is a child marriage? I'll look into that a little bit more. By the way, speaking of religion, and this is a sweet spot, because rabbis, priests, ministers, these people care. And again, I'm not against them or anything. Don't get me wrong. It just, you keep it to yourself. And you don't have to. But rabbis, priests, and ministers are being affected. More than 70 rabbis, priests, and ministers have died in New York City. And now, if you're going to fly on a plane, guess what? If you're going to fly on a plane, it looks like you will have to they'll take your temperature before you get on. So you got to take your shoes off. You got to take your belt off. You got to put everything in a little basket. You got to go through a radiation machine or whatever it's called, a metal detector. They're going to ask you if you packed your own bags, if you wiped after you used the bathroom this morning. And now they're going to take your temperature. Hey, you know what? They should combine the last two. All right, I'm sorry. It's just this. It's been rough. This house stuff is not for everybody. All right, what else do I got? I got a few more stories. Okay, now this is out of Massachusetts. Divorcing parents have a right to post their stories online, so a court says. Well, I should think they do, but boy, oh boy. The lying that's going to take place there. Ruling in Massachusetts finds that involuntary non-disparagement orders commonly used to keep spouses from discussing their cases are unconstitutional. Well, that makes sense. It is unconstitutional. They should be as free to lie as everyone else online. I mean, please, lawyers, if you're out there, we know that when it comes to divorces, you lie. We know that, and the one that always comes to mind is the Woody Allen one, because I still don't believe that one. He touched the kid, and he beat the kid, and the lawyers will actually ask the client if that happened. And it happens in reverse too, where they'll say it to the husband, did she beat the child? I mean, they're looking to get their piece of the pie, you know. So I don't have a lot of respect for divorce lawyers, but we need them, unfortunately. You know, it's kind of like we need executioners and things like that. We need to talk about this, and I don't have a license to do it, or I would play Little Richard music. He died. Imagine he changed the music scene in this country. 88 or 89 years old. God bless him. Gay man, black man, and defied all the odds and odds. And what a hero to music. Good for you. God bless you. Yes, and that's my religion coming through. But God bless you, Richard Littlejohn. Richard Little Rich. I was thinking of Richard Littlejohn, a guy I used to work with, and I wrote him a letter last night. I hope he gets it. A good man who beat an illness himself and is doing very, very well. Richard Littlejohn, the night manager, broadcast for 30 years over at WVOX. Just shouting out to you, Richard. He can't be listening to me because he's working, probably doing the news right now himself. Rats are mysteriously infecting humans in Hong Kong with hepatitis. Man, what is it in Asia? Rats have been affecting humans in Hong Kong with a new strain of hepatitis, leaving scientists baffled at how exactly the virus is being transmitted from rodents. There have been at least 11 patients, including one as recently as April 30th. And lastly, President Trump is installing a prominent donor as the head of the U.S. Postal Service. They all do this kind of stuff, folks, as he pushes the agency to raise prices. Lisa Fine of the Washington Post joined CBSN to break down the White House's feud with the USPS, if you want to read about it. But Louis DeJoy, Postmaster General. And it makes sense if he needs to raise prices, if he wants to compete. But we shall see what happens with that. Okay, it's time to do another look at the weather, and I want to check into that child marriage story. Let's look at the weather now. 46 degrees. It's cloudy. It's going to get up to about 61 or so today, but we have a 40% chance of rain, and it's likely to be a thunderstorm. Tonight, we go down to 40. Tomorrow, it will be mostly sunny. Temperatures reaching near 60. Breezy, though, getting down to 40 at night. And on Wednesday, expect some sunshine, but temperatures in the mid-50s. And the weather, as always, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And we need to do a little bit of research. I'm sorry, folks. I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. It's a little. My friend Anthony sent me. Oh my goodness, Anthony. Oh, I didn't see my calls coming in. I got to find this other thing. He told me about, well, he understood the paradox that I mentioned about the rectal thermometer, or at least my allusion to it. Well done. I got to get this, I got to get this one thing. I got to find out about this. Let me see. I want to find out about him. Russo's on the line. We'll get him. In the immortal words of, you're on the air. Hold on. Hold on. Come on, button. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Here we go. Hold on there, Mr. Russo. I'm trying to find a story here. I have two questions for you, though. Now, why don't I get to it right now? Would you volunteer to be one of the 14,000 people to be infected with the virus for a trial?
Not even a little bit.
What? How much money would it take?
Ain't enough money in the whole world for me to do that.
All right. Now, what about the wackadoos? You know, I probably pissed everybody off this morning. I was a little, I don't know, I'm cranky in my monologue today because I've been feeling well. And, religious people, the vaccine wackos. Do you see there are people that don't want the vaccine? They don't want to take the vaccine if and when it comes. I say we send them all to Rikers Island. But we leave the inmates there. Yeah. Hello. Did I lose you? Hold on. I've got you on. Did I not pot you up? No, you're on. You're on there. I'm going to call.
Bob.
Yeah, there you are. I lost you there for a second. You still there? Uh,
I
uh,
I can't hear you.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me now? Hello. Call me back. I'm going to call him back. I don't know what happened here.
No.
Well, there you are, but I'm going to call you back anyway. PZ setting. What the hell is going on here? Oh, you got to love it. I'm still looking for this story. So, control panel. All right. Let me call him again. This is coming to you live, not on film. Proof of a happier life through radio. Are you there? Unavailable. See, they don't like it when I call them. They don't recognize the number. Anyway, I'm still looking for this story. It's got to be his phone then, because now he's coming through as unavailable. Oh, Norton. All right, endorsed temperature checks. Okay, where is this? Little Richard. That's a mysteriously jumping ship. Okay, gonna try again. Yeah, it's his phone. Don't know why. Don't know why. I don't know why I love you, but I do. Well, I'm gonna find this story anyway. All right, here we go. This story is Norton. That was me trying to call you. Did you not recognize the number? Hello? Are you there? All right. Don't know what.
Bob, I can't hear you on my phone.
What about now? Because I've got levels. I got good levels. You can't hear me on the phone, and everything is working here. Let me see. You can't hear
No.
me at all, huh? All right. I'll try and call you
Not
back
coming through the phone at all.
at all. So what are you hearing me off the off your off? But you're hearing me on the radio, correct? What about now? You can't hear
I'm
me.
hearing you on the computer.
You're hearing me on the computer, so I'm going out, but you're not hearing me over the phone line.
No.
Let me call me one more time. See if I can see anything different. Yeah, because I could hear him. And all right, I want to get this. All right. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf on Friday.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me now? Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf on Friday signed into law a ban on child marriage, making it the third state to fully outlaw marriage for people under the age of 18. Pennsylvania legislature unanimously voted. I did not know that. That's quite remarkable, actually. All right. Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. We had a bad connection. So you would not volunteer, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. Now let me ask you another question. Did you know that there are only 3 states in the union? I don't know how I feel about this. I just checked it out, but Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey that outlaws marriage under 18. I think
Yeah, I didn't know that. I
yeah.
would have thought that would have been done long ago.
My grandmother got married at 15 back in the day. I mean, that's what they did, which is amazing to me. But yeah, 15. All right, a lot of stuff going on. Did you read about these kids? And this is really sad. We've got these young children who are now developing this inflammatory disease. This virus is weird enough to make you wonder. It really is. It's just
Yeah.
it isn't just that it's serious. It's unprecedented in what it does.
Yeah, it's true. They're finding new things that's happening, almost daily with this thing. And it's a shame that we're not involved with the World Health Organization, and we're not involved in any of these other groups that are trying to find ways to combat this darn thing. But That's the leadership we have these days.
Well, well, the other thing is now it's going to be up to the states to fix the problem. Do you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah, yeah. I mean, instead of having a unified kind of approach to it, it's the way we do everything in the in industry in terms of drug testing and ways to combat diseases. There's all these different organizations, both commercial, universities, and all that, are all doing this independent research. And instead of combining all of their talent and knowledge, they're all trying to find it because they all want to make money off it. And it's the same with this thing. Now it's up to each individual state to try and figure this out. It's crazy.
Now, I wanted to ask you about something else because you were, I don't know if you were on Wall Street yet or you were in the electronics business when we first started laying people off in the mid 80s and then it became an addiction. We did a piece earlier, and I've been dying to ask you about this. I almost called you off air about it. A lot of companies are saying they don't know if they'll ever go back to full strength. And I'm just surprised at that. I mean, I should think that they'll go back to full strength when the business returns. I mean, I understand that they won't go back to full strength perhaps right away because they won't have the business. But what I worry about is what happened. Do you remember when in Wall Street when they would just lay people off, even though they kind of really needed them because because as you know the market goes up and down because they just wanted to get a tweak out of the stock price. I've reached the point where I don't trust corporations anymore. I don't know who I trust anymore.
Yeah. Well, where you're going to see that, especially with companies that are still doing business, but with a much leaner staff. I think they're going to be saying, "Hey, you know what? We can get by with less people," and that's going to be an issue.
Well, you remember Wall Street
I had
after
a
9/11, they used it as an excuse to get rid of everybody, and then 6 months later they had to scurry to hire them. But Wall Street did it. They really took advantage of 9/11 to empty the
yeah. Well,
place.
Wall Street, they historically overreacted in laying people off frequently. I know I got laid off from my Wall Street job because the stock market took this temporary dip, and our firm was really the only firm that laid people off, and it was like ridiculous how a lot of people lost their job because of this slight dip, and the investor return wasn't what it should be, so they said, well, let's start shedding some people.
Well, I remember
It's
Marrone.
really
I know of at least
bad.
one employee, and I have it documented, where after 9/11, if they were on medical leave, they told them not to come back. Now, to keep it
Yeah, I know.
legal, they paid them through what would have been their short-term disability. They paid them through the 6 months, but then there was no job for them anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that person sued and did okay. So smart guy, him.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
I,
sorry.
I was listening to some stuff you were saying earlier, so I have a positive customer service story for you.
Get out.
And usually, yeah, yeah. So over the weekend, my washing machine went on the fritz, and I had to purchase a new one. So I researched
No,
online,
are
of
you
course, and
are you taking antidepressant medication? I'm sorry.
I
Go ahead.
so I look and okay, so Best Buy had the machine that we wanted, and it was $549. And they have this price match guarantee. If you find it cheaper, they'll give it to you for a cheaper price. So I looked at other websites, and I see PC Richard has it for $525, and I said, "Hey, what the heck? For $25, might as well save it." So I call up this 800 number they give you on Best Buy, and I get this fellow. He had a Spanish accent, but you could understand him well, and he was very polite and nice. So I explained to him, and he says, "Oh, you found it for a cheaper price." And he said, "That's good." I said, "Yeah, It's all right. Well, where'd you find it?" I said, "PC Richard, you know." And he said, "All right, how much was the price?" I said, 525, and you guys have it for 549. And he says to me, "Well," he says, "I don't see that one." And I and I'm saying, "Oh boy, now they're going to give me the runaround." And he says, "But I see," and then he named some other website, which I don't remember what it was. He says, "I see they got it for 469." He says, "You want me to give you that price?"
Wow.
And I said, "Really?"
This guy
And
should
the guy
never
goes,
work on Wall
"Yeah."
Street.
I said, "Yeah." he says, yeah, you want it for that price? And I said, yeah, sure. So I mean, so I saved almost $100. And when I told my wife, she said, well, this current economic climate, they're really just trying to push
Hmm.
merchandise.
Yeah.
And they're really, really trying to sell. And perhaps the guy works on commission, and perhaps he says, well, whatever price I sell it for, I'll make it. But like the guy was so nice, and then he started chit chatting, and he said, how's the weather there in New Jersey? And I said, oh, I said we had a little snow yesterday, but it's nice now. And I said, how is it by you? And he says, oh, it's warm. So I said, where are you calling from? And where are you located? And he said, Mexico City. And I said, oh, wow. I says, well, it's always warm there. And he said, yeah, in the evening we'll get a little rain and then it'll cool down. And I could hear some kind of noise in the background. And he was probably working from home,
Hmm.
because my cousin used to do that, when she was alive down in Florida. She worked in one of these drug dispensary places. And calls would come in and they routed to her phone at home. And and I'm sure that this man was doing that, making his living, by doing customer service from his house. But he was really polite, really nice, and saved me almost $100. And they
Well,
made the
lucky
sale.
you. Well,
Yeah. So
that's
it was one of those experiences, where. And I told a friend of mine, and he said, I heard that they matched the price. He says, I didn't think that they went out and find a better price for you. And I said, well, I don't know. This guy did.
Well, it's been cool talking with you this morning, warming up some of these issues that I have. Coming up, by the way, we're going to be talking with Mike Edelman and then Mike Duffy. We'll be running some of the same stuff by them. We've spared you Trump stuff today because I'm going to be talking about it with the next two gentlemen. And also the fact, by the way, the crime rates are up here in Westchester County. I don't know if you knew that, B.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
What types of crime?
The usual stuff that goes on in Mount Vernon and Yonkers, murders, knifings, things like that. All right, take care.
All right,
you.
Bob.
Talk to you later.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye. All righty. That's a quick look at the weather. A shorty this time, brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's now 47 degrees. It's going to go up to 61 today, but we may have some thunderstorms. It's going to be a humid day, going down to 40 tonight. Welcome to Radio Westchester. This is the radio station at the train station. We're not at the train station like everyone else. The facility is closed. We are practicing social distancing, and the distant we are as we now come up on 7:35. And this bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Con, the Beachmont Tavern, and plug in virtualreality.com. And don't forget my friends at the Beachmont Tavern, folks. They are open at 11:30 this morning, but then they'll be open to 1 o'clock tomorrow morning, or to keep your head straight tonight. And I know a lot of you working at home, like the rest of us, probably can't tell night from day. And I sort of can't blame you. And let's take a look at the lineup. I mentioned it. Or did I drop it when I dropped my other notes, including my show clock? Coming up in a little while, we will talk with Mike Edelman and Mike Duffy. And then after that, at 8 o'clock, we have a couple of special guests for you, talking about ways to deal with disinfecting during the COVID virus and more. Hezzy Harris will join us as well today. But our special guests coming up at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to need my glasses for this. You know this company, J.P. McHale Associates. They're pest management people, and they now have a Viral Clean disinfecting service. So if you have a business that needs to be disinfected, or perhaps even your home, someone living there has had the virus and you're moving on, they can help you. Also, we're going to talk with Louise Weedcock. She's the founder of the Access Nursing Services. They're celebrating their 35th anniversary this month, and she will be talking also about the COVID virus. You won't want to miss that. And actually, what did I say? I realized my brain left me there. I mentioned that I kept thinking today was Tuesday because I do planning a day ahead. No, it's not Mike Edelman coming up. My brain did not operate correctly. It is the county executive, George Latimer. Good morning, county executive. How are you? County executive? Doo-doo-doo. Did I lose? Okay. Good morning, county executive. How are you?
Good morning, Robert. How are you today?
Oh, doing pretty well. For a minute there, I thought I had troubles with my phone. I had it earlier. Let me turn off the music. I saw your comments yesterday, sir. And again, the county executive here in Westchester County, George Latimer, is with us each and every Monday morning. You're concerned about reopening, but also are taking a hard look at when and how. Where do you stand on that now, and what are your concerns?
Well, I think we're moving toward getting on the front end of the contagion. That's really the first issue. And if, in fact, we're seeing the drop in active cases and we're seeing the reduction in hospitalization, if we've got more than enough available bedrooms to handle what may yet come our way, then we're meeting the criteria that the governor has set for reopening. And, let's keep in mind, it's not necessarily what I think, what the mayor thinks, what other people think. The governor has used his executive authority within the state to close down all these different things. And it's the governor being satisfied to open them up again. That's really the way it's working in most states right now. It's state governors making those decisions. So what I think is happening is it's very clear over the last month we've gotten a lot better in where we are. The scientists will have to tell us that there's going to be a second wave. They're going to have to tell us what's happening with this terrible outgrowth that's affecting toddlers that hadn't happened before. But for right now, all the indicators are positive. But a month ago, Bob, we had 11,000 active cases. We had 20 some odd thousand people tested positive, and now we have 30 some odd thousand people tested positive. But the vast majority of those people have gone through the 2-week period and have not gotten sick, even though they have COVID. So according to medical science, they have beaten the disease if they've gone 2 weeks without it manifesting, in them, sickness or illness or worse. So with that, we view it as having active cases, 11,000 active cases a month ago today, 3,800 active cases today. That is progress. Hospitalizations down to under 700 people hospitalized. At one point, we had 1,200 hospitalized. So we're making progress towards the reopening, and as the governor has laid it out, there's phases of reopening. The first phase involves manufacturing and construction and curbside retail being allowed, and then that's followed in the second phase by all retail, back of the house offices, and so forth. And I think we're in a position where, within a couple of weeks, maybe at the most, we should be able to qualify for those levels of opening. Opening restaurants and bars is the next level beyond that. That starts to become more problematic. Not having restaurants and bars open, particularly restaurants, is a major drain on our Main Street businesses. As a former head of the local Chamber of Commerce, what that means. But restaurants are one thing, bars are another thing. Bars, you pack yourself in because that's part of the experience. You're wall to wall, cheek to cheek, and there's music and there's beer or whatever there's drinking. Restaurants are a bit different. And so that would be the next phase. And with that phase, I believe, will be barbershops and beauty salons. I'm well overdue for a haircut.
I saw you on TV. I saw you on TV, but I look just like you do, so I didn't feel so bad. If the county executive's hair can't get a haircut, I feel okay. So
the only two things I can tell you is that, first of all, Bob, we're happy at our age that we have hair. A lot of guys are.
Yes, you're correct.
They don't have what we've got. And then number two, the fact that we're still growing our hair shows that we're following the rules. When I see somebody show up and his hair is nicely barbered, it's like, hey, dude, you broke the rules. I know you did.
Well, all this stay-at-home stuff. My daughter has actually, I hope she's listening. She's never really been a good cook. Her husband can cook, but she's actually started cooking, which may scare people more than COVID. But she's offered to cut my hair, and I don't think I'm going to let her do it. but
Well, not after you insulted her
no,
on the radio,
she,
Bob. I mean,
I
you just
know.
threw her under the bus, and now you're going to hand her the shears? Are you kidding me?
She wanted to send soup over to me. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know about that.
I get on the radio and say my daughter can't cook. Are you crazy? My
No.
daughter's in Lexington, Kentucky, thank God. So whatever I say, she's not going to necessarily know.
Yeah, but you know
But
how I
man,
get
oh
away with
man,
it? I may actually have her on the show. You know,
she doesn't listen.
she's a microbiologist, the county executive. So she's
Oh,
really a fanatic about
excuse
all
me.
this stuff. You say hello to her and she's wiping her hands, you know, she's got all kinds of
Oh,
those towels. And her husband's also a microbiologist. You go to their house, you got to wear a hazmat suit if you show up there. Anyway, no,
no,
back.
I would say that's like, when you say, what do you think you're, a brain surgeon? The guy goes, yes, I am.
Yeah, I know.
What do you think, you're a microbiologist?
Nah,
Yes,
but
I am.
she's had to put up. She's had to put up with me for years, though. Our county executive. She's totally used to me busting her chops. She's a wonderful, was my best friend her whole life, and a wonderful human being. But moving on from that, um, the I have to bring up money only because it's realistic. The
Of course.
situations that you all have, and when I say you all have, all of the chief executives, from mayors and city managers right on up to the president. Whenever we do this, it's there's going to be some side effects we don't like. It has to be pressure filled. And what is the financial situation like for the county right now? And what are you hoping for?
Well, it's terrible. What you basically have is nobody thinks this is some kind of mystical, magical thing. When you shut down a society, you shut down sales transactions, and therefore no sales tax revenues or minimal sales tax revenues. When you gas up, you get a couple of pennies off of that. But with no commercial stores open, you're not getting sales tax. The hotels get shut down, you're not getting hotel tax revenue. We made the buses free in order to protect the drivers and the passengers, so there's no bus revenue. There's a very good chance we're going to lose most of the summer revenue from parks and recreation, summer camps, playland opening, pool passes, all of that revenue down the drain. So our county is looking at anywhere from $100 million loss, maybe more, maybe $140 million revenue loss. The state's losses could be $13 to $15 billion. Villages like Marrone Village could be $1 million to $2 million in the hole. Towns the size of Greenberg could be $7 million in the hole, and this is everywhere. This is not mismanagement of a government, as my good friend Mitch McConnell might say. This is mismanagement of an economy where they let it coast for all this length of time, and then when they saw the contagion coming along, they didn't act fast enough to try to reduce the impact of it. And because of that, now we've got a terrible economic structure. What we're doing right now is we're looking at every possible angle we can to economize, to cut the gap as much as we can. We cannot close it on our own. It is not possible to close $100 million gap on our own, $120 million gap on our own. However, as you know, about a month ago, we announced 3 moves that saved us $20 million. We're now looking at another variety of actions that we hope will save us X million more. We'll announce them probably within a week, 2 weeks, and that'll be our phase 2 budgetary reductions. Ultimately, though, you have to remember where the county government is, and for that matter, the local governments. And I understand there's a lot of critics of government there. Oh, you waste money, this, that, the other thing. Fine. You were in corporate America. I was in corporate America too. Let me tell you, you haven't seen wasted money until you see what senior management does discretionarily because they can.
I've been there.
It makes me laugh. If I did that stuff as the chief executive officer of the county, the Journal News would be right there with the camera watching me do it. But when you're a corporate, senior manager, nobody knows.
You mean you're not
at the end,
you're not going to take your whole management team out to the canyon in Palm Springs?
Yeah,
Resort.
exactly, just like that.
I spent a week there once.
Or arbitrarily change flights for no reason at all, costing penalty fees of hundreds of dollars every time you do it, or leave your rental car at the airport running because you didn't want to miss your plane because you ran late.
And get this
Long story short, though,
I got to go to the real Bellagio in Lake Como on the company dime once. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that if you did them you would be hung in effigy on every pole. We're talking with county executive.
It's the invisible hand of the marketplace.
Yeah, we're talking with county executive. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I love it when somebody lectures me. I love it when somebody lectures me because they know that I'm in government. and they see my resume and they think that's all I've ever done. And they start lecturing me about how hard it is to make a buck in the private sector. And I don't want to laugh at anybody because they have a right to have their opinions. But man, they don't know what they're talking about when they're talking to me. I've seen it. I've been there. I've watched it up close and personal. And yeah, the guy who runs a mom and pop grocery store, he's the one that's being screwed in all of this. The major corporations, they'll write off debt. They just got a big tax cut 2 years ago. What did they do it with? They bought back stock. They didn't invest in research
and now they're talking about leaving the layoffs. And I got to tell you, as a guy who's running a small business, we haven't gotten, other than the stimulus as a private, we haven't gotten one dime yet, not a cent.
And the small businesses the rhetoric was, oh, we want to help our small business people with the PPP. The first time around, the small businesses didn't get it. Now, the second time around, they're trying to help out. But there's this little blue state, red state thing. Well, if you're a small business owner and you're from a blue state like New York, well, you're at the back of the bus. If you're a small state, if you're a small business in red state Oklahoma, you're at the front of a line.
I got to ask you.
But I digress.
No, don't digress, because I need to ask you. This is the kind of question I ask Andy Spano too when he comes on, for a little bit of insight. Yeah. Has it always been thus? I mean, if
no,
would the Democrats and Republicans ever do this to one another before during a crisis where you pick the party to?
It's worse now. It's worse now because we're in a crisis. Let me tell you, first of all, most of my criticism as a Democrat of the Republicans do not reflect the local Republicans. The local Republicans who I deal with are more conservative. They hold positions that are different than mine. They compete against us in elections, and they represent a point of view that's held by people in the community. And I have almost no gripe with them. I'm in a campaign, and you've watched a lot of my campaigns. Mm-hmm. I will make my points, and I will push back as necessary. But the systematic vilification of the other party does not exist locally. You'll watch Democrats and Republicans bust each other, but then still go out and have a beer together. Or you hear somebody say as a Democrat about a Republican city councilman or a Republican county legislator, he's a good guy. I like her. We disagree, but you know what? I know they're a good person. That's what happens locally, all right? And there are individuals who don't want to see that happen. There are people who are absolutists of the left and right, and it won't be happening until they destroy the other side. But at the national level of politics, I have never seen such vitriol as I've seen now. We are going through a crisis that equals the World War and the Depression. And I don't care what anybody says. This pandemic, you turn on the TV, it's in Brazil, it's in Israel, it's in Iran, it's everywhere. And in most of those countries, there's a certain amount of dissidence on the far left and the far right in every country. But in this country, it's been viewed as a blue state, red state thing. You wear a mask. Oh, you must be a Democrat. What? Are you kidding me? Since when does wearing a mask for public health differentiate your philosophical ideology? You wear a mask to prevent the other person from getting your germs. That's why you wear a mask. If I don't have to wear a mask, guess what? I'm not going to wear a mask. But I don't wear a mask to make a statement about politics. And the local people understand that. But the national people, it's all part of this culture war. And look, there's a lot of power at stake. If your guys are running the national government and you get to run education your way, you get to run oil and energy your way, you make a ton of money and your philosophy is advanced. If the other guy's in charge, you lose a lot of money, and the other guy has his philosophy in place. But you asked me a question about budgets. I want to go back to that. I digressed, so I apologize.
No, I actually appreciated the digression, but go ahead, sir.
We and every other government is going to do everything we can to narrow the gap. Ultimately, the biggest single thing that you do, with the last chance thing that you do, is you lay people off. Why don't you lay people off early on? Because they have families. They have to feed themselves. If they go into unemployment, that hurts the system. They're not making a paycheck. They're not buying goods and services. They're not keeping the economy going. If we have to lay off at the last, we'll have to do it. But that's not the first thing you do. That's the last thing you do. And there's a host of things we can do before then. And that's what we're trying to identify. How much can we bring that gap down? As I said, we brought it down 20 million already with the way we restructured a couple of policies. It's going to be tough sledding for the next 20, 30, 40 million. But there's an opportunity. We have a reserve fund. We can use some of the reserve fund. We'd be a blind idiot to use it all, because the next year comes, and how are we going to close that gap? And you can bet next year there's going to be a gap without question. So now that's the pragmatic reality of these things. And when people say, you're going to raise my taxes, I'm going to raise my taxes. Look, we didn't raise your taxes this past year, property taxes last year. And if the society had not gone in this direction, we were on path to do it again. Slight decrease of property taxes. What do you want me to do in a pandemic? What do you think I can do in a pandemic? Do you think I can cut public health nurses? Do you think I can cut county police? Do you think I can cut people who are in the jail? Do you think I can cut the people who are running the sewer treatment? What do you think I can do? Oh, cut the fat. Okay, well, you point out the fat in the budget to me. That's just your opinion that we shouldn't be doing this service, but somebody else benefits from the service. You think it's fat. That's why you think it should be cut. So we're going to do everything we can to try to be reasonable about this. But you got to understand something too from my perspective. Mm-hmm. I've been around a long time. I didn't start this thing out yesterday. In private sector and the public sector, there's a lot I don't know, and there's a lot I have learned over the years. And what I've learned is most of the time the devil is in the details. It's not in the rhetoric. And the rhetoric flows easily because people get on Facebook or they get on a radio station where you can call in, or they comment on an online publication and they say wild and outrageous things that seem to them to be true. I can't say that they're lying. This is their opinion. They have a right to an opinion. They're American. But if it's not an informed opinion, if you haven't looked at the budget, tell me when you criticize. Did you look at the budget? Did you analyze the budget? When you saw a line in the budget, did you understand that that's a mandated cost that cannot be cut? And more often than not always, but more often than not, the critic has never done those things. The critic says, well, in South Carolina, it's a lot cheaper down there. How come it isn't that cheap in New York? Well, we have a mass transit system in New York. Well, we provide more Medicaid costs for people. Now, if you want to argue we shouldn't have Medicaid, that's a political position. But to understand that right now, Medicaid is what's keeping these hospitals open, the revenue stream of Medicaid. Without that, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, these hospitals would be closing. There's no revenue at all to do indigent care for the poor, health care, And people say, well, I don't like Obamacare. Get rid of it. It shouldn't be right. I want to have my own health care. Okay. What do you do with all those millions of people that don't have health care and get COVID? You got to look at the totality of things. And it doesn't make you a Democrat. It makes you a realist. And if you're conservative and a realist, then we can do business. We can talk. We can think this thing through. I can compromise a little bit with what you want, and we can go forward. But if you're going to be an ideologue and sit on the edge and say the society should work the way I believe it should be, this is my philosophy. We're going to get rid of all of this stuff. You hear people talk like that, and you say to yourself, that's what are you going to do? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And unfortunately, you now find people in very high positions that don't know what they're talking about, and that's scary. It's one thing to have a guy sitting in a bar. You can't sit in a bar now. But you sit in a bar knocking down shots, telling you how the world should work. We should, if these guys don't pay us the money for NATO, we should just cut them loose. In the real world, NATO is your buffer from Russia. And if you're not still afraid of Russia as our enemy, then you're crazy. And China, too, they're not our friends. But, a guy at a bar, he can say what he wants to say. Now you get into the governor's mansion, the county executive's office, the mayor's chair, the presidency of the United States, and you can't afford to sit around there making decisions like you're a guy at a bar knocking down shots.
You'd be surprised. My guest, the county executive here in Westchester County, George Latimer, we're talking about the coronavirus effect now on finances. I just one more question, and it really captures the two issues that you've spoken about. Do you think at the end of the day, of course, people play politics, and the first bargaining position is always tough. Do you really believe that at the end of the day, there won't be federal money available to help blue states?
Yes, I think there'll be money to help. There won't be a full bailout. No one is going to say, "Hey, George, how much is your gap? Oh, it's $100 million. Oh, here's a check for $100 million." It's not going to work that way. There's going to be thresholds, and you're going to have to do everything you can do first before you can get any access to it. And you're going to have to make the tough decisions. And they're going to expect to see something strong that you do, not just you sit back and you lay on your back waiting for your stomach to be rubbed. But when I hear Mitch McConnell say, "Well, I'm not going to help out those blue states," that's the beginning of a negotiation. What he is saying is being meant for Nancy Pelosi. He's telling Nancy Pelosi, I intend to bail out some industries that you, the Democrats in the House, do not want to bail out. So here's the deal. You want me to bail out your California cities and your New York towns and counties? You're going to bail out some industries. Why? It might be the Kentucky bourbon industry. It might be the Kentucky horse racing industry. But whatever industry it is, you're going to bail them out if you expect me to bail out your cities and towns. That's the Mitch McConnell.
Well, at least that's the horse trading.
Because there is no percentage, right? There is no percentage in having states, counties, and cities go bankrupt. Disaster is not like a blue state disaster. It will be a disaster to the stock markets, and it'll be a disaster to the economy of the United States. You'll be cutting off your nose to spite your face.
7:55. If you would, where do you? And of course, you don't have a crystal ball up there at the county seat. But as you see the numbers coming down, beginning to stabilize, hopefully there won't be a second wave, although there could be, as you know. How do you see us returning to normal? What do you see a couple of months down the road if we stay on the track we're on? What can people expect? What hope
I
can you
think you're
give
going
them?
to see. I think you're going to see a lot of things open in June, but not everything, and opened in a reduced way. Restaurants will have a limited number of seating. There'll still be curbside situations. You'll see, people will go back to church and synagogue, but there'll be limits to the number of people that can go into the sanctuary or the church in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to see it start to come back together in June to some degree. It'll feel like it's starting in the right direction. It will not be a flip the switch light, you're all open again. The summer will not be the summer as we know it. And there'll be certain things that we normally do in the summer we just can't do. I mentioned Playland. It's hard for me to envision how I could open Playland, but I'll put that off to the side. That's one example. You'll see a lot of things happening in the summer, and it will move toward normal, but it won't be fully normal. And the economy will not bounce back. The president is just dead wrong when he talks about a bounce back, and here's why. You can open up all the businesses in the world that you want, but you can't make consumers go to them. And some percentage of consumers will not feel comfortable getting on an airplane. They won't feel comfortable getting on a Metro North train. They will not be comfortable going to Citi Field or Yankee Stadium, sitting in a row of seats with a bunch of strangers. And while that could be 30% of the consumer, I think it's more, but it could be 30% of the consumer population, 30% less of the business when you open the doors. It's better to open the doors, but it's not going to be bounced back stronger than ever. You need consumer confidence. And when consumer confidence is going to come? When you have a vaccine and an antiviral treatment. When your next door neighbor gets sick with COVID, goes to the hospital, and they apply zutazapamin, and zutazapamin makes him better. And he comes home, and you see him outside the front door. You say, "Hey, Pete, how did it go?" And he says, "Man, it was tough, but I got out of it okay." When you see that happening, then people are going to say, "You know what? Let's do that vacation that we were planning on, honey, or let's go to the ballpark, Bob, or you and I go to the ice skating rink.
Yep.
Let's go see the Rangers Islanders game at Madison Square." That's when you'll feel comfortable. When you know that if you get sick, there's a treatment for it. And one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
All of this, if I may, I am no scientist, and I don't play one on TV. And politicians who get out there for the thing of the moment, hydroxychloroquine. Oh, this could be it. Or racimorelevin, whatever the last thing is that I just heard about. They say it could be used in certain ways to reduce things. It is a helpful drug, but people want the immediate end to the war. We went to World War II. It took us almost 4 brutal years and the dropping of an atom bomb to end a world war. We did not get into the war in December of 41, and it was over by April of 42. Now, you and I weren't alive, but our parents were. They suffered. Our fathers suffered overseas. Our mothers suffered stateside. And they weren't complaining about, "I want to go to a dance. I want to have all the good things in life." Of course we do.
We've been spoiled.
Of course we want those things. But we all of 42, all of 43. We didn't land in Europe until 44. And at that, they were fighting ferociously across the European continent, and they were still island hopping in the Pacific, and they weren't near the home islands until they got to Okinawa after Iwo Jima. I know my history. This is this. I expect to be back in 3 weeks. That is a sign
that's not
of
going to
a
happen.
society that's selfish and wants what it wants when it wants it. I want the businesses open. Our businesses are dying. So the government has a responsibility to help those businesses stay afloat and open it up and move it forward. We'll probably have some increase in contagion, but if we can manage the contagion when we open up the country, we'll slowly get back to where we need to be.
I
And
hope so.
in a period of time, we'll get back to business.
Well, I want to thank you, and hopefully that will happen. County Executive George Latimer will talk to you again or next week, or if you need to make any announcements. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Bob.
George Latimer, everybody. Coming up, we have two special guests. We'll be right with you. We'll be right with you, guest. We actually won't be talking with Jake Schaefer until 9 o'clock before we talk with Bob Cox. But right now, we're going to be talking with two very special individuals. We just spoke with George Latimer, the county executive, about COVID. And now we have two very special guests on the line. We have Jim McHale. Now, you may have heard he's had advertisements and on a radio station that I do some work for, Westchester Talk Radio. He's president of JP McHale Pest Management. We're going to talk with him. And we're also going to talk with Louise Woodcock, founder of the Access Nursing Services, celebrating their 35th anniversary this month. And they're founders of the COVID Care Force, the COVID Couch Nurse Support Group, and now COVID Clear. Good morning. Which of the two of you are with me?
Jim McHale's on the line.
Hey, Jim McHale. How are you? Welcome to Radio Westchester. As I said, I know a little bit about your business from my work with Westchester Talk Radio. So you.
Oh, great. Yes, and I think we've spoken before.
Yes, we have. Welcome to the
believe,
program.
yes.
But now what I'm very interested in, first of all, tell people a little bit about your business in general. But then what I'm very interested in is this smart. You're getting rid of rodent issues, but also the sanitizing service. That's what people are going to be interested about vis-a-vis COVID-19. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So, yes, we're a full-service pest control company, full-service pest solutions located in Westchester. We have an office in Manhattan, Long Island, Oakdale, Long Island, and we're on Madison and 40th in the city. We are, very early in the stages of our lifetime as a business. We wanted to make it all about the client service, so the client experience. So, we knew early on it wasn't about killing bugs. We make it easy to buy. We bundle up services. We're sort of your one-stop shop, exceptional client experience, and, delivered it with, the mission-critical environmental sustainability aspect. So, yes, pertaining to COVID and just public health overall, one of the things we are first to market with is called our SMART program. It's a software-based rodent elimination system. And why it's so appropriate for this time of the in history is because basically, for years we used to put out rodent traps, and we go out and we check the traps and we refill them, and we're basically trap checkers, right? And people pay us, by our time, which is perishable, like a piece of fruit. So with this system, we install it. And when rodents enter a facility or a building or a property, we get notified on our computers in our software system. So we actually call you and say, hey, there's rodent activity in your house. Now, that serves like a couple of purposes. There's a tremendous value because, one, we're proactively managing your situation. Two, you're no longer paying us to check traps. You're paying us to find out the avenues of entry, the pathways at which they enter the home or business. Three, it eliminates unnecessary visits inside the home, which is something that people, it's very important to people at this time, in this time in history, because most of our services, especially on the residential side, are being performed outside now. So when we do inside services, it's usually for an emergency situation or an active rodent problem or squirrel problem or some sort of a crawling insect activity. But So you're eliminating unnecessary visits to the home during COVID-19. We're calling you when there's the rodent problem, and again, you're paying us now to find out, to solve the problem, to exclude them from your home or business, rather than just check traps and replenish the bait. So it's chock full of value, and it's a tremendous service, and we're first to market with it, which is tremendous. It's our third year, and we've had tremendous success. Now, for years, we have always, cleaned up rodent fecal matter, removed and replaced soiled insulation, wildlife, and all the things that come along with them, their nesting sites. And so when this COVID-19 problem or pandemic hit, this was a natural pivot to us, going into the sanitization, disinfecting business, because we already had the PPE gear. Our guys are trained with OSHA-related masks, and we have the products, and we used to disinfect. But now new vertical markets have opened up. We're doing now pharmacies, we're doing supermarkets, we're doing human services like group homes and nursing homes and those types of things. So all these new vertical markets opened up, and now we're getting a lot of our hotel and our restaurant businesses and our gyms and fitness centers that have kind of shut down during this COVID-19 battle have now called us, and they want us to come in and sort of bundle up the rodent program and the disinfectant, because they, listen, any business person today, they don't want to be the person that opens up and has an issue, a health issue. Public health is top of mind. So a lot of companies are saying, hey, we're going to open up the hotel next week. Come in, disinfect, install the rodents, because rodents right now are a big problem, because a lot of the restaurants closed down, and the dumpsters that normally were full and provided them with daily meals are now empty.
I didn't think of that. Let me ask you a question. And I know
Sure.
we're going to be joined momentarily by Louise Weedcock.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
We're going to get to you next,
Hello?
Louise. Hi,
Can
we're
you-
Bob
oh,
Marrone.
good.
We can hear you
Okay.
loud and clear. We were on with
Good.
Mr. McHale.
Oh,
and
no,
I think
I've been
you know.
listening
Okay. Now, Jim, are you, now that this COVID thing has done what it's done and new businesses are opening up, are you getting different kinds of calls? For example, are you getting calls from, let's say, a homeowner or an apartment building where people have had COVID, asking you to disinfect or anything like that yet?
Absolutely. We're getting a tremendous amount of calls. And, again, because of the rodent situation, when rodents make their nesting sites, when you disturb rodent nesting sites or the fecal matter or the urine, you're exposed, you could get what's termed hantavirus, and that can
Yeah,
evolve
right.
into
Mhm.
HPC, which is a respiratory issue.
Eek.
So you don't want to be like, even COVID, not just COVID, but also these other diseases that come from these rodents now. These restaurants have been closed up, and there hasn't been a lot of activity. They've been dark. That's perfect for rodents. And now they're scattered because there's a lot of pressure on them because of lack of food. Subsequent to that, on the residential side, a lot of people are staying home. They're eating more food. Their trash cans are overflowing. We're getting a spike in the amount of calls we get on the residential side for rodents, because now the rodents, again, they're seeking food, they're seeking shelter, just like everybody
Jim,
else.
you know what I want you to be able to do right now, and then we're going to talk to Ms. Weedcock, and then we'll wrap up with both of you together. Ms.
Of
Weedcock,
course.
pardon me, is tell people how they can use your services. What's your website and what's the phone number?
Okay, we can be reached at 1-800-479-2284. That's 1-800-479-2284. Our website is www.nopests, that's NOPESTS.com. Website's chock full of information, chock full of value. Our response is immediate, and we're standing by.
Yeah,
Our teams are working from home, the admin teams.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
I
just want to add for you,
true pros.
and folks, even on top of what they normally do regarding, first of all, they're going to disinfect the place for you, but you don't want your apps coming in and using the refrigerator because they can't get in the garbage. We move on now. Now, speaking of COVID, Louise Weedcock is with us. She's the founder of the Access Nursing Services. They've been around 35 years this month, but she's also, and listen up for this, the founder of COVID Care Force, the COVID Couch Nurse Support Group, and now COVID Clear, an employee also of COVID Screening Service designed to ensure that businesses meet state requirements. you're a very busy woman, Louise. Tell us about what you do, and your nurses are courageous for sure to do what they do. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, Access Nursing Services, first of all, I'm a registered nurse myself, and I come from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So my whole orientation when I built my business 35 years ago was to sit down with hospitals in a regional area. And I chose New York, although I'm from Baltimore, because it's a gorgeous regional area, and settled in Westchester, which I think is a gem.
Mhm.
And I decided to build a business of providing nursing care, sick care, anywhere, really anywhere. I happen to have a brother who is a year older than I and was number 5 in the nation when he was 16 and had a horrible diving accident, which left him much like Christopher Reeve.
Oh, my.
And so I can say, I know and I saw and I witnessed. He ended up actually dying just a few years ago as America's longest surviving quadriplegic. But during that time, I witnessed that hands that don't care, Bob, they hurt.
Oh, yes. That's well said. That's well said.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. So when you're going to build a nursing service starting 35 years ago, and you're a woman, you don't want to compromise any of your values, and you know that hands that don't care hurt. I just started building a business, one client at a time, one nurse at a time, one patient at a time. And as a result, over the years, we have just built this kind of niche relationship and providing a workforce to hospitals. For example, we're one of the largest provider of Chinese services, Korean services in Yonkers. And, we don't try to be a Me Too organization. We like to say that we are strong enough to support you, but small enough to embrace you. And we do that for our nurses. We provide live-in services, and we provide, escort services. We provide nursing, in-home nursing care, all the way to infusion.
Now, let me ask you
services.
this. I read, I read some of the stuff about your group, the COVID Care Force. I take it you have nurses going out and taking care of people with COVID. Am I reading this right?
So what I did was I took kind of, being a public health person, I started looking at the COVID numbers in China back in January, and I saw what was happening. And then I saw the hiccup, the double bump here. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to come to New York, and we're not going to even know what hit us. And I turned around to, we actually got our first order to do some COVID testing. And it was almost like a tea party. Oh, yes, we'll put up these nets, tents, and then we'll have these tables, and we'll have these forms. And then, oh my God, there's no tests around. Oh, wait a minute, do you have a mask? No, I don't have any masks. Where are the gloves? And then, oh my gosh, you can't even get a tent anywhere. And the minute we turned around from there, all of a sudden this avalanche of patients started coming at us. So I decided that I would create an identity, because this was going to be, to me, much like 9/11. And I had lost some dear friends there. And so I thought, you know what? I'm building a COVID care force where the nurses have an identity, they have a mission, they have a separate kind of orientation, and we're going in there with a commitment to care at whatever it takes.
Now, in what circumstances? In what circumstances are they being employed? And I want to remind people we're talking with Louise Weedcock. She's the founder and obviously CEO of Access Nursing Services. 35 years here this month. Now, are they going into hospitals? Are they going into nursing homes? Where are they going?
Yeah, so it immediately then the the demand for nursing went from outdoor community-based screening right to the emergency room. And so we started providing the largest hospital systems in Westchester, in New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut. And we started providing them with trauma and emergency room nurses and then ICU nurses.
Wow.
Next thing you know,
Now-
we're training our nurses on ventilators.
Have you had? Oh, wow, that which is very important, I know. But don't you? But you need a respiratory therapist there too with the nurse, right? When you insert a ventilator. Now, question.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
But you wouldn't believe, Bob, how many nurses on a floor didn't really understand that.
well,
They don't
bet.
always see ventilators.
Well, let me ask you this.
Respiratory therapists take care of it all, yeah.
Two questions that probably everyone's wondering about.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of safety equipment are you providing with A and B? Have they gone into any private homes? For example, if someone has the virus and the rest of the family can't take care of them, do your nurses go in and do that? Now, the second part of the question then is because there are people listening who may need that service, because maybe if I'm 85 and you're 85, which we're not, and my wife gets the illness, I can't take care of her. So having said that,
No.
what about the courage of these people? How are they afraid? Are they confident? And tell me about them and the equipment you give them.
So we give them equipment every week, and actually we send that equipment to the patient's home.
Wow.
Because that is, I feel this is reverse isolation right now. The person who's coming in from the outside is more dangerous than the person on the inside. And so I just want to make sure that that person is immediately safeguarded as soon as they come to the door, washing hands, donning clothes, doing everything that they need to do. And, as well as saying hello to Mrs. Jones in a limited way. And it's tough because I got to tell you, Bob, a challenge right now, and you hear who I am, just kind of where my heart is. How do I train a care force to care without touching?
Yeah. I am just...
Yeah.
And then, oh my goodness. Well, there are people listening.
And so anyway, yeah.
How do people use your services?
So anyway,
how do people use your service?
Okay, so our service is, it's 212. Oh, excuse me, 914-752-2102.
Now, let me punctuate. I want you to give the number out again. We're talking about Access Nursing Services for it could be your services, your business, your hospital,
right.
your nursing home, your assisted living community, your private home, whatever it is. It's Access Nursing Services. What's the phone number again, please?
Services, and the phone number is 914-752-2102.
And do you have a website?
Yes, we do. www.accessnursing.com.
Now, have you and Mr. McHale, have you met? Do you know each other? Because you're both providing wonderful businesses to service the COVID problem as we speak. Do you two know each other at all? Mr. McHale?
Well, this is our first time. My first time listening.
Well, boy, well, between the two of you, if I had a facility, I would have Mr. McHale disinfect it, and I would have you treat the people. If you would, what I'd like both of you to do, first, Mr. McHale, your phone number again and your website.
Sure. It's 1-800-479-2284. It's 1-800-479-2284. And the website is nopests.com. That's NOPESTS.com. And don't forget, ticking mosquitoes are out, and that's seems to be a pandemic's favorite. We're very, very busy. And even lawn and plant healthcare and stuff like that. Those disease-related pests. People are staying home. They want to be comfortable in their homes, and they're investing in their homes. I mean, they're not traveling.
Got it. Louise, your phone number one more time and the website.
Thank you. 914-752-2102. 914-752-2102. And the website is Access, ACCESS, nursing.com.
Thank you both very, very much. Have a wonderful day. We're going to talk with Hezi Harris in just a moment from the Yonkers Tribune. But first, let's take another look at the weather. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by... Exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. It's 48 degrees, going to get up to 61 today. It's cloudy. We've got a 40% chance of rain, thunderstorms to be precise. Now tonight, partly cloudy, 41. Tuesday, lots of sunshine but breezy, getting up to near 60, 40 at night. Wednesday, sunny. The high will be 60 degrees and back down to 43 at night. We need to get that up to the 70s and get some beautiful weather. We move straight ahead now to our next guest, one of the people who inspired this radio station. He's the managing editor and the publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Please welcome once again Hezi Harris to Mornings with Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester. Good morning, Hezi Harris.
Good morning, Mr. Marrone. What a pleasure.
Well, the pleasure's always mine. Geez, talking to that woman that ran the nursing service. Imagine she's got people willing to go into nursing homes and home. My goodness.
Yep.
They're as brave as any soldier.
Very compelling. Also, Mr. McHale.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are things in your favorite city, Yonkers? What's going on? What's in the news?
Well, I've a beef to take with you. I don't know exactly with whom you were speaking, but they mentioned that there were, or maybe you mentioned that there was an increase in crime. Oh, I think it was you. You said there was an increase in crime, and you mentioned Yonkers and Vernon.
I was being flippant.
You said, oh, okay, because it was very, very flippant because, the truth is that we have no crime whatsoever in Yonkers. I don't know if you're not listening. You don't hear, there's not one word.
Sorry.
You laugh, but
sorry.
This is very serious stuff. There is no crime at all in Yonkers.
I publicly apologize.
All over the place,
I publicly apologize.
We keep them at bay. You know how we do it?
You
know how we do it?
You don't tell anybody. That's how you do it.
That's exactly right. I hope that's not flippant because that is the truth.
Oh, my goodness, Hezi.
So I'm glad. I don't know. You would think that by now, after all these years of doing this, that we would have figured that out, that everybody else has got the story. But evidently, we still don't. But it was kind of you to bring that up. I hope it's not a secret that will be.
It's not a secret. And sometimes I deserve a slap on the wrist for being glib. But the fact is that Yonkers and Mount Vernon have more than their share of crime sometimes. And I kind of report it. It's in the news. But I was being flip. I was being glib. It was inappropriate. Why do I mention what happens?
But if we don't mention it, there is no such thing as called fake news.
It's called the ostrich.
Facts that don't exist.
The ostrich dynamic. Put your head in the ground and nothing happened.
Oh, okay. I like that. Okay, I like that.
Oh, God, I like you. You sound chipper. Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
I'm feeling good,
I can see that.
I heard your show. How could you not feel good? Well, I was listening also to the county executive. Very, very interesting. He always is. And, he's worried about a budget deficit of, $100 to $120 million. And we in Yonkers, which we do every year, though, we've already said that over 200 people are going to lose their jobs because of the budget. And what's very interesting is, and I don't know if you know this, about 6 months ago, everybody who works at City Hall got a pay increase. We're not talking like $500 or $5,000. We're talking tens of thousands of dollar increases for individuals.
At a risk of building your ire. At a risk of building your ire. Why don't they just undo the raises?
I'm calm.
Why don't they just do in the raises and not fire everybody?
Well, it's so interesting that you bring that up because it went right over my head when I heard this. And I'm saying, if I only had spoken to Bob Marrone, then I could have pushed this forward and say, Bob Marrone says that it's logical to reverse the increase that was given 6 months ago for whatever reason. We messed up or the numbers weren't right. But now we've got to do this instead of firing people. And you know what's very interesting, and even the county executive did bring it up, so there could be a caveat here. We have a lot of people who work in county as well as in city government, and they're probably on a step program and they get a certain amount of money because they're part of a union and stuff like that. But in a crisis as grand as this is, shouldn't there be an equal amount of giving back? And this is financially. Isn't it better to get a little bit less than get fired totally?
Why would we do
And
that?
couldn't everybody be in the same? I don't know. Well, I don't run the city, but you might. You have more influence than I do.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it.
I'm not laughing about it.
Not in
but it's
Yonkers.
true.
Not in Yonkers. I don't. You are Mr.
Well,
Yonkers.
I don't know. Then what is it? Let me ask you a question. Then it's a pithy question. Then what is it about Yonkers that doesn't allow you to have any influence in a city that big? It's the biggest city in the county.
Well, they are the biggest city in the county, but as you know, there's a lot of radio silence coming out of Yonkers. They don't readily come on the
Oh,
air.
well, there is no radio. There is no radio in Yonkers.
You aren't I wouldn't say you didn't like him, but you weren't a huge fan of the former head of the city council, Chuck Lesnick. But he was one guy who would come on. He was one person who actually would say yes to come on the air.
Yeah, because he was always in search of love and adoration.
Yeah, but
he was a failed character then, and he remains failed to this day. And when he was,
I wish you'd tell me how you really felt.
You got to look at this stuff. I don't feel this way. He's proven himself to be that way. I don't have a feeling. I give a hoot one way or the other about someone like a Chuck Lesnick.
I know.
Or the other failures in the city.
I've done it.
No, I don't care. It's a question of looking at their credit, not their financial credit, but the credit that they deserve based on the work that they've done. The answer is they've done nothing. That's it. You work for 4 years, you get paid, and what do you return for that? And the answer is absolutely nothing but BS and promises that are unkept. It doesn't work that way. Maybe it does in Yonkers. Maybe there are other places that follow the same route, but it doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for our people in the city.
Let me ask you perhaps an unusual question, because it's not what we do. Every city has people. For example, in New Rochelle here, we have a guy like Chuck Strom, city manager, who's for someone in public service about as good as it gets. You must have people like that in your city. Who are they?
No, they're dead.
No, Jesus Christ.
No, they were.
They were.
They were.
Well, then who were they?
There is a difference. Well, who were they? There were people like Marty Rochelle, who was.
Oh God, I love that guy.
He was the city manager.
I love that guy.
And then he became a bail bondsman.
I didn't know he was. I knew he was. I thought he was a clerk. I didn't know he was a city manager. Yeah, I got along with him very well. He
was city manager.
Yeah. He passed away a couple
of years
ago.
Look, yeah, there were a lot of people that tried, except that there were so many powers that are in the city of Yonkers. There was a constant thrashing out for power, and a lot of people lost in the process. And there are a lot of questions to be asked even today. Is this administration doing a good enough job to get this city moving in the right direction? And you'll find a lot of people who suggest that, yeah, that is the case. We need to have the mayor, who's now running in his third term, we need to keep him going until the fourth term and the fifth term, or forever and ever, till, God forbid, till the day they take him away.
Well, none of these Democratic mayors, unless they do something incredibly thoughtless, they're gonna be president for life. Papa Doc Duvalier. And we're seeing it in White Plains. We're seeing it in your city, in New Rochelle. I'm sure it's going to be that way as well.
Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with the fact that maybe some people are going to be have gravitated to the Democratic line, but they're doing it out of prudence because they believe that more people have turned over to that side. It doesn't mean that the people in government, even though they call themselves Democrats, are going to be Democrat in the way they govern. And so it's just a jockeying, it's a game. It means absolutely nothing. It's a label. You know what we need? We don't need Republicans. We don't need Democrats. We don't need independents. What we need are people who are proficient in leadership. They have integrity, so they have the capacity to lead because they are respected, and they're smart enough, not necessarily on their own. You know, they say that, what's his name? Ronald Reagan was not the most brilliant guy in the room, but he
He
had
surrounded
the
himself with top
humility to
people.
say,
Yes.
exactly. And you know what? I didn't realize that initially, but when I read the book about Abraham Lincoln wouldn't allow anybody into his cabinet unless they had the capacity to challenge him.
Yes.
And
You
if
read
he
his
was
book,
challenged,
Team of Rivals. That's a
sure,
terrific book. Terrific book.
absolutely. And that's what kept him at the cutting edge. And that's why he is one of the most prominent leaders that America has ever
I
produced.
just want to reset
So
here.
this
My
is
guest,
quality.
I just want to reset here. My guest is Hezi Harris. You're listening to
Sure.
Mornings with Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester on each and every morning from 6:30 to 10. Hezi, the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune, and he's been there for many years, even as he ran other newspapers too at the same time. Do you know who, when you talk like this, I think back to a woman who I'm friends with her on Facebook now, but Joan Gronowski had a great deal of integrity. And how long was
Yes, she
she?
did.
She was a councilwoman there for how long?
She was a councilwoman for the third district, representing the third district. And she promised when she ran for office that she would stay one term, which is 4 years, and she would not run again. And her logic at that time, and it still is, the logic was that if you can't get something done in 4 years, then you just can't get it done. And when she said she wouldn't run, I was like aghast. I said, "What's wrong with you?" And not for too long, you can't challenge someone who is so familiar with what she did, her purpose, her intention, her mission, and her promise. And even though I would have preferred that she stay on, not that I had any influence one way or the other, I begged her to stay on because she was the most credible person in the city. She said that she promised the electorate that's what she would do, and she was going to keep her word. And I reluctantly, I know it sounds it's funny because I was laughing just the way you just did, but at the end, I appreciated the fact that here's someone with integrity who kept her word and would not budge. And I had then said to her, "Well, you know what? You're probably right. You shouldn't." I was being smart. I said, "You're probably right, and I'm not going to disagree with you. You shouldn't run again for city council." I said, "You should run for mayor." And I said, "And if you would run for mayor, you would be preeminent." And one of the things that really annoyed me about her, and this is not a problem of her specifically, it's a problem that many women have. And that is they've been downtrodden by men all their lives for so many years of their lives that they can't get beyond the fact that despite not having a college education, which she was embarrassed about, I said to her, at your age, she's my age, and she's still brilliant. I would love to have a month of her in office. But the bottom line is, she came from an old society, like I came from that same old society,
We all did.
and women were not respected as much.
No, but
And
they
were put in
matriculated up through.
second place.
Yeah, but they matriculated up through
Yes,
and learned everything that a college person learned and more.
With age, one does. So there is no difference. Like you may pass your college boards, whatever, but that doesn't mean that you require them later on in life if you're aware, if you read, if you're curious. And when you talk about Chuck Lesnick, he was there while she was there. He undermined her left and
I did
right.
not
You know
know
why? Because he saw her as the challenge to his prominence. You see, this is what I know when I cover Yonkers, and that's what nobody else wants to know or are upset at me when I bring it up, because they don't want all this ugliness to come out. And I always say, if you don't want the ugliness to come out, then don't do it. Just don't do it. What's the problem? Who's asking you to go astray? Stay the course. Do what you're intended to do, what you promised you would do, and then there would be no problem.
Clearly.
And then I would have to retire.
Yeah, you could retire and yeah, but you
Ain't happening
you
soon.
wouldn't be happy if you retired anyway. As far as
Well, I know.
the virus goes,
Yeah.
how are I know that Sean Patterson Howard was with us last week, and she had a problem in her city in getting people to comply with the social distancing orders, et cetera,
Right.
to the point where she even wanted to move up the quarantine. To hours. She almost wanted to have a curfew. But our hospitals are doing better, although she had to buy gloves with her own money, with her campaign money. How is Yonkers doing with regard to people following the rules A, B, and how are the hospitals, such as St. Joseph, et cetera, doing there?
Well, it looks like St. Joseph's, I think, is in a financial bind, and if they don't get an infusion of funding, I don't think they'll survive the year. St. John's Riverside is in much better health financially, and Montefiore wants to purchase it. And I don't think the deal has been totally consummated, but I think it's on the verge of. So hopefully that will still go through. And well, those are the issues. But then as far as following rules and regulations, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I put up a notice. One of our police officers was moved from working the intelligence unit, and he was forced to go onto the street. He had a heart condition. He had diabetes as well. He was slightly overweight. But he was very proficient in the intelligence unit. So despite Center for Disease Control regulations that demand that if you have someone who works internally and you want to move him or her to the street, you need to find out if they qualify to work the street. Well, they never bothered to look. They knew that the rules and regulations were there, but they didn't want to. They pushed him out on the street, and he died within a week.
Yeah,
For coronavirus.
Just an incredible
This was
story.
a guy by the name of Sullivan. Well, the thing that was interesting is upon his death, there was an honor guard of people who came to honor him.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. The police commissioner, John Mueller, showed up in dungarees and green sneakers and a top, which is the uniform of the police commissioner. Next to him, shoulder to shoulder, was the mayor of the city of Yonkers, and shoulder to shoulder with him was Shelley Mayer, the senator. And there was a line from here to kingdom come, and they thought they were being smart, but they didn't follow rules and regulations and still don't. And that's been troublesome. And unfortunately, you may have noticed, the mayor of the city of Yonkers pointed out that he was sequestered, but that was over a month and a half ago. And then when we wrote that he was sequestering himself, but it seems that a couple of weeks ago or the last week, he said that he tested positive for the coronavirus antibodies, and now he's going to give blood. Isn't that great?
Good
So I think
grief.
we have to be thankful that it happened and that he's got the antibodies and he's willing to give the blood. He's still holed up in the house, though.
Well, that's nice. We're talking with Hezi Harris, managing editor, publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Hezi, what came as a shock, Riverdale, of course, is part of the Bronx. Now, I had toured
Sure.
back when I was at another radio station. I toured that home. And on everything on the face of it,
You mean the Hebrew home?
the Hebrew home in Riverdale, very, very well-run facility. Right. But they've had like 100 deaths.
In fact, I recuperated there for 3 weeks after my
after your heart surgery,
triple bypass.
but
after the heart surgery, I went there.
it's a wonderful place, and I just can't believe they had. I guess
Uh-huh.
it's the nature of the illness. They had all those deaths there. I mean, those wide halls. In fact, I was saying to somebody yesterday, perhaps they were a victim of their own success because they have all these wonderful. And that's not the same people who are sponsors here, folks. Full disclosure. But I do have to speak well of what I saw there. They have so many activities. I'm wondering if that contributed to the problem. I really don't know. But that was shocking. The news that came out.
Actually, I don't know how many facilities similar to that you've ever been to, but whether it be Riverdale or other communities in Westchester, because Riverdale is just south of the border,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to name names, they all work in the same manner, especially when they take care of senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Senior citizens are they commiserate with one another. There is usually a dining room where
Uh-huh.
everybody comes and meets and eats with their friends, the people that are there, even over like a 3-week period when I was there.
Sure.
You were in touch with the same people. Everybody wanted to sit with me, or I wanted to sit with them. And before you know it, it becomes a family within a week, not even that long. The point is, if God forbid somebody is infected, and it's not that it starts or is initiated by the population in most cases, but by people who visit.
Yeah.
And you don't know if they are asymptomatic or symptomatic. You just don't know, and that's the nature of these communities that are built up to take care of our elderly and our ill people. And that's the way it is. It's no different from whatever facility you may have in New Rochelle or in wherever you want to go.
And
So
the ones that I've been to,
I appreciate.
they're spit clean.
Yeah.
They're just wonderfully clean. They're well run, and that I was so impressed when I toured that place with the activities and the professionalism, and even how wide the hallways were, so it was easy for people to move
It's
around.
one of the best. It's one of the best
in the country.
respected
Yeah.
in the country. You've got, but I guess we never had an illness like this, a pandemic
That's right.
like this.
Yes.
So if we had been informed, let's say, or okay, we have it now here, right? If we are informed by this situation, what will be the future scenario where you have a home for seniors who need medical assistance and exercise, and also need a community type of living structure? How are you going to create this sort of a system? So it becomes, we need to be informed by this in order to know how to evolve. And just in the same way as the county executive said, well, if we open up the restaurant, we're going to have to keep it, in such a way so that distances are kept, within standards. So this is something that we never knew. We never thought it could happen like this. There has never been anything as contagious as this, except for the Spanish flu, which goes back to 1908?
1918, I think.
that was
1718.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
1918. Right. Okay. So,
So,
it's nothing to say bad about them, but
no, I know that. That's
it's
why
nothing to say bad about any of
I
them.
almost
It's
bring
just
it
that
up
it's
because
the nature of the beast.
I'm trying to share with the audience the fact that if you think that a place like that is not very well run, it's the nature of the beast. And again, they're not sponsors or anything like that, but I was so impressed when I was there.
Like, for example, one of the things is, like, we are only now beginning to look at what can be done. And one of the things that can be done, and you happen to have Mr. McHale on today,
Yes.
and I had him on last week. What's interesting is that they have, besides pest control, which is where they began years ago, I think when the father had the business, created the business, this is his son. So what they've done now is they have different modalities to create an antiseptic mist in a room and disinfects it within 3 minutes.
Does he have the drinkable one as well?
In other words, no, that's only the president's own
okay.
elixir, and I don't know if he's drunk any of it yet, but you never can tell. but we'll find out soon enough. We'll see if he's still here or if it's been fake news. But so the thing is that there are mechanisms. And the point is, it would be fantastic, and I don't know what the costs are, but it would be fantastic if schools could reopen knowing that they were disinfected and that you can disinfect it and the kids can come to school and then they can go home as well and parents can be secure.
That sounds
and
pretty
that
good.
might be the same facility that you could use in a store or a restaurant. And talking about, like the county executive said, people need to feel secure. Things are not going to open up unless they feel it's safe.
All righty then. So tell us what you're going to do on the radio today.
Oh, well, let's see. I've got, what's his name? John Bailey from the White Plains Citizen-Net
My
Reporter.
man. Yes.
We're going to find out what's on his mind. I like him a lot.
Me too.
And we're going to speak to Michael Edelman. I think you had mentioned that Michael Edelman is on your show as well today.
No,
So we
I
have
was
him on
wrong. I
10:30.
read the wrong. I was reading tomorrow's list. He's on tomorrow. He's
okay.
on Tuesdays at 7:20.
Okay.
Edelman's good.
Okay. So with us, it's John Bailey at 10 o'clock on Mondays and Michael Edelman at 10:30 to 11. And because we don't have another guest this week, then it'll just be me sharing international news and stuff. Oh, and just wanted you to know, today is the anniversary of the Final Solution, which was the Final Solution was actually a harbinger to the time of the Final Solution back in Nazi Germany, when the idea was to obliterate and to kill all the Jews and to exterminate them. And what was interesting, it was on the 11th of May of I think it was 1960
Mm-hmm.
or 65, I don't remember. And it turns out that Adolf Eichmann was picked up in.
I was just
in
going to say, yeah, this
Argentina.
was when they got Eichmann, because I was almost thinking about
That's
the
exactly
Wannsee
right.
Conference. And have you
Exactly.
ever seen the movie with Kevin Brown about the Wannsee Conference? It is the most riveting
No,
2 hours. You must watch it.
I didn't see that. I've been to, it's pronounced in German as Wannsee.
Wannsee, yes.
And I was there. I went to Berlin because my mother's parents, the ashes of my mother's parents were somehow, I don't know how they got them, but they're buried there in Berlin.
Mhm.
And we went there, my mother and I, when we found out that there was a plot like this for both the grandparents and the parents.
Mhm.
So we went there to put a tribute in front of the cemetery, in their honor. But that was it. It was amazing. And what was interesting is this was like they lived a half a block from the it's called the Alte Synagoge, the old synagogue. It was the largest building in which we know now as East Germany, and the border was right there. And what was interesting is that they was never bombed, and even the cemetery was never bombed. It was amazing. I was like in shock to see it. There was a lot of dishevelment because I guess of whatever, but I think it was all natural causes rather than anybody trying to get there. But it was amazing. And it's interesting
It is
because
amazing. But by the way,
I wanted to get something back from there. And on the street that my mother was born in and lived was a watchmaker from Berlin, and I found their watches, and I ordered one. I got it last month. I'm just thrilled to have something that was from there that reminds me of her because that's on the block where she lived.
wow. Well, God bless. And also, before you go, if you get a chance
Sure.
to watch that movie or rent it, about the Wannsee
I will.
Conference.
But Wannsee
Wannsee Conference.
Conference, no
Heydrich,
problem.
Heydrich
Okay.
was the most evil. All the well-known people, the Himmlers, the Goebbels, the Hitlers, the
Mhm.
Gorings. Hydrich was by far and away the most evil. If you get a chance, you've got to see this,
I
see
will.
the film.
I will.
All right, listen, thank you
I'll
very
write it
much.
down.
What time's your show on today,
My,
and where can they get it?
at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, and you can go to the YonkersTribune.com website, and on the upper right-hand corner, you always see our daily, list of who's going to be on and what they're going to be talking about.
Okay, thank you very
Always
much,
there.
my friend. We'll see you down the road
Thank
next
you.
week.
All the best to you.
Hezi Aris, managing
you.
editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Janelle Albritton's next. Ms. Albritton, we'll be right with you. Just a quick look at the weather. It's up to 50, going to get up to 61 today. We will have 40% chance of a thunderstorm. Tonight, cloudy. But tomorrow, it's going to be sunny but breezy. Temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. All righty, we move right to our next guest. You know her as the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County Post.com. She's also a master's in public health, a jazz singer, a videographer. Good morning, Janelle Albritton.
Good morning, Robert Marrone. How are you doing?
You went with that Robert thing again. I have a great weakness for that. Great. Just be careful, woman. It's great to hear your voice. Are you staying safe?
Yes, I am.
Well,
yes,
good.
I am. It's not that hard for me.
We want to be sure that you do. You've been sending me some stuff which I find very, very interesting, and regarding the virus and things related to it. Wow. Tell us a little bit about. I know Trump admits something he shouldn't have about the virus tests. What was that? Tell people about that. What did you discover?
Well, he finally said out loud to reporters, no less, what I've been saying for weeks is that if you don't have testing, you don't have case numbers, case data. No test, no cases.
No,
So he said the reason he doesn't want more testing is he doesn't want the case numbers to go up.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he says it makes us look bad. I saw the video too.
Yes, but we need the testing in order to be able to know when we can go back to normal, though. My goodness. Is it that hard to make these tests? Is it that difficult? I mean, isn't it a stick and a computer, for God's sakes? What am I missing here? What have we done? You're in the business.
Well, I don't know how difficult it is to make the test, but I am reading that there are, rapid tests popping up in other countries, like Sweden and South Korea. They seem to have no problem deploying the test, but that's because there's the will to allocate resources in that direction and the courage to say, we want to know, and just test as much as we can, so that we can do the contact tracing and the isolation and stop the spread. But now it's finally reached the White House. So I'm just kind of in a mode of sitting back and see where the hot spots spread. Florida had the spring break. Texas is opening. Georgia and Florida are opening. Iowa is open now. So we'll just see. Meanwhile, I'm focusing on learning more about how to reinforce our immune systems, and I'm learning a lot on the Dr. Brownstein.com website.
Apropos of that, there are two dynamics we now know of that are killing people and now killed 3 children. It's somewhat different, and that is an overreactive immune system. In the case of people who are otherwise young or otherwise healthy, even if they're a little older, who are having the cytokine response, the immune system winds up killing them, and now this hyper reactive reaction in children, the inflammation reaction, which in some quarters is called Kawasaki disease. Now, how do you thread that needle? How do we build up our immune systems, but keep them from overreacting, or is that a temper that needs to be done to it?
Well, I think an overreactive immune system is a weak immune system where it's not
I see.
giving the appropriate balanced response. I'm not an immunologist, but I would refer to Anthony Williams' books, Medical Medium, and I would recommend that people do a number of things. Number one, stop all dairy and eggs, because these are the favorite foods of pathogens, whether it's the COVID,
But
the
stop what
coronavirus,
now? Eggs?
eggs and dairy, because especially eggs, they are a favorite food of pathogens, especially viruses.
But what about after the digested? Because I know they use them to develop virus and vaccines, but
Right.
but do they actually increase the likelihood that you'll have the COVID, that the virus will spread through your body more readily? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's the implication. Of course, Anthony Williams not commenting in his books about COVID because they were written prior to this, but he certainly talks a lot about Epstein-Barr virus and other pathogens as well. So we know that a lot of mucus buildup of viruses like to live in that
Of
mucus.
course,
You've got to keep your body clear of that.
pneumonia.
So
You sure?
let's say cut out dairy, cut out eggs, and then also Dr. Brownstein says you take your weight in pounds, divide it by half, and that's the number of ounces of water that we should be drinking every day. So water is very important.
So a
in helping
150-pound person should be drinking 70 ounces of water a day. How many glasses is that?
Yeah. You get a mason jar, 24-ounce mason jar, and do 3 of those.
3 of those.
It's not
I
that
see.
hard.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
You sip it throughout the day. And then, of course, the celery juice is very helpful.
Oh, are you
just
still
straight
drinking your
celery
celery juice that you used to bring into my studio? Ugh. But if it's good for
Yes,
you.
sir. Yep. On an empty stomach, you do the lemon. You do 24 ounces of lemon water first. Wait about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then do 16 ounces of straight celery juice. And it's just the proof's in the pudding. I would just suggest people start doing it and see how they feel after a week. For me, I felt once I cut out dairy and eggs and I started celery juice and I started having nothing but fruit before noon to really get the glucose in and feed my brain and feed my liver, I found that the brain fog really started to lift. That was associated with, the lower thyroid function. A lot of people are underdiagnosed with hypothyroidism. And so that has a lot to do with our metabolism and how well our immune system can mount the response to fight an infection. If we're running chronically low temperatures, 94, 95 degrees, it's kind of hard to kick up the temperature and burn up an infection. So these are some basic things. As for the Kawasaki's, I don't know as much about, but I do believe that that could be attributed to the fact that we've got such a toxic society. We've got so many, heavy metals in the vaccinations. We've got so many toxins in food and air that for these kids, they're like just at the brink of their bodies going nuts. And then if they get the COVID, it just pushes them over the edge. So again, I'm seeing this.
Well, it hasn't been a lot
like,
of children, but still, we don't know what
Right.
else this virus is going to do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and again, and I mentioned this to you before. It seems like instead of a disease where there's a very clear pattern, like for example, smallpox, right, or Parkinson's, it's pretty clear stuff across every human that has the condition. It's a very clear list of boxes you can check off. It seems that across the ages, there are some things in common, but there's a larger and larger list of menu items, as it were, that patients are are showing different combinations.
Yeah,
of things.
this virus has so many uncertain outcomes. I guess all of you in your business will have to study it and continue to do so. And we hope you'll continue to do that and report back to us. How's your paper doing? Your website? Anything there you want to call our attention to before we send you on your way?
Yes, later today we're going to have some podcasts up that Steve Callis has been doing with Joe Stazak down in Philadelphia. And also we're doing we're starting some side-by-side Skype sessions with his son, who's based up in Ithaca. And it's going to be a lot of fun because they're both a couple of sports heads. They've got
well, his son's a Boston fan.
Tongue.
He needs to have some sort of an exorcism, get that out of his son's head. Steve
Well,
Callis.
as Steve would say, that's poor upbringing.
Yeah. By the way, he was with us that Friday. He was terrific as always.
He's always on point.
I got to do something with him separate. I think to have some sort of a sports show with him as well. Listen, please take care of yourself. The world needs you, folks. Please go to the WestchesterCountyPress.com. WestchesterCountyPost.com. I know. I'm so sorry. Or go to her website. Right. You'll find a lot. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Janelle Albritton. And she can sing. All righty. We were hoping to see if we could connect with Jake. But after Jake, we will be connecting with none other than Bob Cox. But we do have to take a look at the weather. And the brother is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. It is 50 degrees already, getting up to 61 today. It's cloudy. We have a 40% chance of a thunderstorm, but we will get up again to about 61 or 62. Tonight, getting down to the 40s. And partly cloudy. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine, but it'll be breezy, 57 degrees, 40 at night. Wednesday, sunny. The high will be 60. The overnight low will be 43. And Thursday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high will be 63 degrees. And the next hour will be brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, the Beachmont Tavern, pluginvirtualreality.com, and United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Just a reminder about tomorrow. Somehow I gave out tomorrow's menu today, and that happens when you get old, I think. But tomorrow we'll, of course, talk with Vince Open Up. Ed, we'll talk with Mike Edelman. Then we'll bring on a man you love to love, Mike Duffy. Give us a different view of things. Also, he's a law enforcement professional and a defense attorney. Sean Patterson Howard will be with us tomorrow. Tom Abernanti. And we may be switching Harlan Ullman around tomorrow with the professor. So we will let you know. All righty, we're going to take a little break. Freshen the coffee cup. We'll be right back. Okay, it's that time again for our long-form interview. It is 9:05. Yet last week we were relocating, so we did not have the fruit of dealing with this man, of having this man on. One of the original people who inspired this radio station because of his hard work as a journalist. Please welcome the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. We even have a question to come out of the box with him, and then we'll find out what else he's been reporting. Please welcome Bob Cox. Good morning, Bob.
Bob, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. And you're coming through loud and clear, Bob. Welcome to the program once again. Robert, I sent you a text, and because I was amazed at the fact that we had a bungee principal, came and he went. And I'm going to be the skeptical one. I have a hard time believing it was a family issue, but what do I know?
I struggle with that too, considering that we were told the main reason to hire a guy named Adolfo Muhammad as the incoming New Rochelle High School principal was that he was from here, that his kids lived here, that his family was from here, and yet somehow he didn't take the job because he wanted to spend more time with his family, I guess, in Brooklyn, where he works. So didn't really ring true.
Yeah, well, you know, and on Wall Street, we used to use that whenever we were getting rid of somebody, but gave them the chance to resign. And the standard text was they want to spend more time in their family. No, it doesn't ring true. Do you know anything we don't, or is there any backstory to this? Was there a disagreement about something, or did, you know, like that old Honeymooner episode, did he see a mop and run out of the kitchen?
Well, of course I know a lot. There's only so much I can say.
Well, of course.
Without necessarily compromising sources,
but do not do that, of course.
Well, what I can tell you is this. They announced his hiring on April 14th at the school board meeting that night. But from what I'm told, he never actually signed a contract. So in the days leading up to his withdrawal, they were going back into him, you know, trying to get him to sign a contract and trying to understand why he wasn't signing the contract. But at the end of the day, and I think people may be happy to know this, it's not like he had a signed contract and now we have to pay him, even though he never started in New Rochelle. To my understanding, he just simply walked away, having never signed the contract, which raises all sorts of questions, you know, about why they would have announced him in the first place had he not signed a contract already.
Well, you know, people when they manage stuff and when they organize stuff, sometimes they get ahead of themselves. I mean, even the president of the United States says, "I can't wait to get back. We're going to beat this," and he's trying to be a cheerleader, and something which I sort of understand. But sometimes you get ahead of yourself. Could it be that, or do you think it was just bad judgment?
Well, Bob, I'm not going to go to the idea of connecting Donald Trump and the coronavirus to the school board announcing a hiring.
But my point is that people get excited about stuff and they get ahead of themselves. But it was just the one that came to mind.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. The reason that you don't announce that you've hired somebody without signing a contract is because sometimes they don't come because they didn't sign a contract. So to me, it's inexplicable that you would announce a hiring before you actually had the hiring done. I mean, look, we're sports fans. Do you ever see a Major League sports team announce that they have signed a free agent when the person's still looking at other options? I mean, we don't see that too often. So to me, it's just another example of the mismanagement that we see in the district. And if you want to chalk it up to being overly excited or something, I mean, that's still mismanagement.
Well, yes, of course.
You know, don't count your chickens till they hatch. But, you know, it seems to me totally irresponsible to announce you've hired somebody who hasn't actually signed a contract. I mean, in the case of Dr. Fejo, the superintendent of New Rochelle, you know, she signed a contract on the 27th of June and they came in and announced her on the 28th. So they know to do that. In fact, I've never heard of a case where somebody was announced as being hired and then it turned out they never signed a contract.
Well, a lot of that is words too. Like there are times I've seen letters of intent and people say that we have a letter of intent, but they don't usually say hired. But Bob, obviously there
Well, I
has to be
mean,
more. What
maybe someplace, but I've never seen it in public school
no.
system
Now?
ever.
What can you tell us? I mean, money, power, philosophy. I know there were a couple of stories written about things he did in previous schools, but do you have any sense, to the extent that you can share it with us, of what, again, were there differences in how to do the job?
No, my understanding was he was following my reporting and the reaction to it on social media, and he didn't like it, and he decided not to come.
Well,
Plain and simple.
But he didn't like what, though? I mean, your reporting is just it sounds like he didn't like your reporting. He didn't like what the reporting was about, I think would be more to the point. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think I'm. You're asking me sort of to get into his head a little bit. I'm reluctant to do that. I'm trying a little bit, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, and I'm going to step back a second, right? Which is on April 14th, the district sent out a press release. I published that press release, soon after it came out that night, and but by the time I went to bed that night, I had already been contacted about the controversial post that he had on his Instagram account. And so I emailed the district leadership the following morning, and I said, look, I just found out about this Instagram account. It's got some controversial images.
Yep.
I'm sure that you have anticipated this and therefore have a prepared statement. So I'd like to get a copy of that prepared statement. So I got back no response. I followed up again the next day. I then followed up with another request. Plus, I'd like to hear from Mr. Muhammad directly. I'd like to interview him. Nothing. And ever since then, there was no response. So I did what I normally do, which is I said, well, if you're not going to respond, I'm going to go ahead and just report what I'm seeing here on this Instagram account. And, that's it. So I did. So I ran that story. Still didn't hear anything back from them, although the district put out a statement from Mr. Muhammad, which I did post, and I would describe it as somewhat rambling, with incredibly poor punctuation, grammar, and misspelling in it. And the center of the whole piece was his statement that he was against hate in any way, shape, or form, and something about a superintendent's conference that had been canceled, but nothing, no direct response to the Instagram account. And by then I was working on his Pinterest account, which for those who saw the story, and I'll have these all linked in the show notes for this show
segment. Sure.
The Pinterest account was actually worse than the Instagram account. Anyway, I do want to talk about all that, but I thought, maybe we'd hit a few things first and get them out of the way.
Okay, let's do that. But let me remind people of who is with us here on Mornings with Bob Marrone, our long form segment. Bob Cox, managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound. I have a couple of reactions, and which I get to share because they're my reactions. One is, and then we'll go to these other items. One is, I'm not sure that everybody wants to work when they're held as accountable as I think your outlet makes them. But more importantly, I'm not sure they vetted him very well. But those are my reactions on the face of it as a listener myself. Go ahead. What are some of these other issues you wanted to get out of the way before we got further into that?
Well, the first one was that we had snow in May. I thought that was pretty startling.
It was.
I was up late about 1:30 in the morning when my Twitter feed hit a National Weather Service announcement that's snowing in Central Park, latest since I guess tied a record since '77. But the next day, I will tell you, I was out walking Zeke, my English Bull Terrier, around the downtown area, and he was seemed like maybe annoyed with the snow. It suddenly started, pelting us, and he was getting all wet, and he was very unhappy.
Dogs don't like the snow.
He had sort of an adventurous walk, because then a little while later we bumped into another person with an English Bull Terrier like Zeke, and you don't see many of those dogs. That, for those who don't know, it's the Spuds MacKenzie or the Target dog.
Oh yeah.
And so for him, it was like a long lost brother. He was very, interested and excited. And when they actually got close enough to touch noses, they kind of embraced and started play fighting and kind of wrestling and jumping in each other's back and chewing on each other's neck and ears, which is normal, and just kind of like long lost, brothers. And it was kind of fun for him, and it was nice for the two of us that owned the Bull Terriers. However, walking away, I found that Zeke had gotten a cut in his ear, so he was bleeding a little bit. And we kept walking because Bull Terriers are tough. And then we went past an apartment building that had a hedge in front of it, and suddenly he yanked my arm off and started pulling me under the hedge in front of this apartment. This is not uncommon. He had seen something under the hedge, and I saw a cat go flying out the back of the hedge, and I realized he had seen a cat and he was trying to get at the cat. And this is something he does from time to time. But also, he doesn't know the cat's gone, right? So he's still in there digging away, trying to get under the hedge, trying to rip my arm out of its socket or pull me under the hedge. So in not wanting to have a dislocated shoulder, I wrapped the leash extra tight around my hand and I gave it a good tug. And, Zeke came tumbling out of the bushes. And as he kind of rolled over, I looked down at him and saw that his mouth was completely full with another cat.
Oh, no.
He had caught a cat.
No.
This cat was particularly fat, I guess slow, and very, very furry. So he really just had a mouthful of fur, and he's looking up at me like, all right, well, I finally caught one. Now what do I do? And because this is the first time you ever caught one of these cats. And the cat, for its part, is looking up at me and giving me this kind of like, this sucks kind of look. And
Yeah,
a little bit of,
yeah, I would say so.
Help, please.
Yeah,
help.
you want to help me out here?
So I yelled at Zeke. I was like, drop it, which he never listens to that command ever. If he's got something he's, chewing on, he finds on the ground, he'll just keep eating it, like whether it's a thing of aluminum foil or
a warm, delicious cat. Yeah.
But I wouldn't say he spit out the cat, but he kind of like took a deep breath and blew. Pop,
all right.
And out popped the cat, which I guess he decided he wanted no part of. The cat jumped up in the air, did one of those Wile E. Coyote things, and went screaming away down the sidewalk, all in one piece. And Zeke sat there with his ears pinned back, looking like, did I do something wrong? And I said, well, not really. I mean, you're a dog, so you chase cats. Anyway, we got home. My wife and my son were extremely dismayed because Zeke was completely soaking wet. He had blood on his head and on his back, grass stains and dirt. And he had a big scratch down the middle of his nose from the cat. And then on his belly, he had another scratch down the center of his belly. And what happened?
Yeah, I said,
well,
it's a long story.
Anyway, Zeke just trotted around the living room with his head held high, sort of the conquering hero, and was quite pleased with himself. We cleaned him up. The cat was fine. He was fine, but it was quite an adventure.
Do you know that there's, we all being sequestered to look at a lot of movies and stuff and books. And it's not a great movie, but if you like dogs, the movie with Harrison Ford that's out, Into the Wild, it's on, you can rent it for $3. It's actually about a dog. Yeah. Did you see it? It's really about the dog. It's kind of cool. I was never a big fan of dogs till I had a Great Dane, and I fell in love with that dog. And sad thing is they don't live very long. Broke my heart, but that dog had a soul.
Well, I'm sure people are listening, or especially cat lovers, who are horrified at this story. So no cats were harmed in the making.
No, I was going to say the making of
Yeah.
this story. I like cats too, but I love my Great Dane. God
No, I
bless
don't
that.
like cats. I mean, I would have been happy if you ate the
Oh,
cat.
no,
I
you
didn't
see
really
now.
care.
Bob Cox hates the cats. Now that's actually an interesting story, but yeah, when you walk a big dog, you have to be or a strong dog. You have to be very conscious. I had quite the leash on. Oakland was his name. A beautiful, beautiful fawn. Just a great dog. Love that animal. So that's an interesting story. So you were out in the snow, fought with cats, fought with other. By the way, I don't know if you're familiar with the hockey color commentator. He's like 80 now, but Don Cherry, he had one of those dogs
Yes.
as well. Yeah, he had one of those. Well, you use it in your newspaper. There's a picture of you walking that.
There you go. Well,
Wonderful
that picture is actually my old bull terrier who passed away sadly at 3 years old.
Oh
Sadie.
my! What happened?
Yeah, that breed has a tendency to get kidney problems, and poor Sadie had kidney failure. So it was very sad. And Zeke was, a replacement. Sadie was a sweet dog that was raised by a breeder and just a lovely dog. And Zeke came out of a kill shelter in Hempstead and has always been kind of a lunatic. So jumping under the hedges and otherwise getting into mischief.
Other side of the track. Yeah. All right. What else?
Another topic is school elections. So
here we go again.
For those of you who don't know, the governor moved a lot of things around, including school elections are moved to June 9th. So that also means that they extended the deadline to today to get on the school board ballot. And since you're not allowed to go outside, you don't have to get any petition signatures. You don't have to go to City Hall to get a packet. You don't need to go to City Hall to drop off a packet. So for anybody listening live, you have until 5 o'clock today, Monday, May 11th, to go apply. Anybody who fills out a form, just a one-page form called a candidate affirmation form, just basically your name and address and your signature saying you're qualified to vote. And you too can be on the ballot. And I have been encouraging anybody and everybody to get on the ballot because, I will tell you that there's been a concerted effort by the board to discourage people from getting on the ballot. When the actual deadline occurred at the end of April, I went in as I normally do on May 1, and I asked for a list of who the candidates were, and I was stonewalled. And I didn't understand why. And I ended up so far I've had about 16 different email exchanges with the clerk, and they have still not told me to this day who were the people who originally got on the ballot. And so I from the behavior, I can only take it that they just didn't want anybody else on the ballot. At the time I was asking, I found out unofficially that only 2 people had qualified for the ballot, and there's 2 spots open. So I feel like they were quite content to have an uncontested election, and that these 2 people would automatically go onto the board. And ironically, one of the 2 people, it did not include the incumbent, who said that he is running, Chris Daniello, but he did not file, according to what I'm told, his petitions on time. Now, he and everybody else got a reprieve thanks to the governor.
I was going to say, but he can still run now.
Well, anybody who's a qualified voter can run. And I would just say this because obviously the board doesn't want to have anybody on the ballot. That was very clear, which really is antithetical to everything that they should be about. They should be actively encouraging
so much for
people
democracy
to run for school board. In fact, I haven't checked this morning, but in the week after Cuomo made the announcement, they updated the website to reflect the new vote for the budget. The fact that, importantly, that it's going to be all mail-in ballots, but they never updated anything about the school board race. So I did. So if you Google, New Rochelle School Ballot 2020, you'll find my story, which has the details of what you need to do. But I would certainly encourage anybody who's listening now live to either get your name on the ballot or send my story around. It's on Talk of Sound on the homepage. That has a link including the PDF file for the candidate affirmation, and send it in. I mean, I've been pushing that pretty hard, and right now I believe we're up to 10 people have gotten on the ballot, and I'd love for it to be 20. I mean, the more the better.
The more the merrier.
I mean, now that it's so easy, so that goes to a second issue, which is the budget, and I'm been talking to people behind the scenes, but I'm going to say now publicly here for the first time that I can no longer stomach the leadership of our district. I think it's been so bad, especially looking at over the past 2 years, but even the past 6 months under the new superintendent. They all have to go. I mean, I don't know what else to do about it, but the leadership has been so bad, so inept, that I'm going to be working starting tonight to defeat the budget. Want to make clear that, I have a pretty good track record of defeating things like this. So I hope that the school board won't be so stupid as to take that lightly.
Bob, if I may, what will be what's your intent in defeating the budget? To send a message, or because it's too much?
Definitely not to send a message. I talked to a couple of people, because a couple of years ago there was an effort, which I was not a part of, to defeat the budget once, to quote, send a message, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And what message is being sent by not actually defeating the budget? I mean, you're causing a second election to occur. You're wasting everybody's time. But no, my goal is not to send a message. My goal is to do what the law requires, which is if the budget is defeated twice, then the state steps in with a contingency budget and has the effect of putting the board and administration in handcuffs, not literally, but very much limiting what they can do. And that's what I want to have happen. I want them to not be in control of what's happening in our district, because if you look at the last 2 years, it has been an absolute disaster. I go back to January 10th, 2018. You had the murder of a student. 8 days later, you had a stabbing in the school. Neither of those incidents have ever been explained. Never. They've never addressed any of that. Nothing. There's been no report, no debrief, no nothing. Then you had, of course, other things like the Reggie Richardson fiasco. He resigns, and then they don't accept his resignation, so he comes back and unresigns, and then we have to pay him $200,000. We have to pay Brian Osborne a huge sum of money. We get rid of one of the guys who actually knew what he was doing, one of the few, our school business official,
Mr.
Jeff White, who was
Mm-hmm.
cleaning things up. And then you had things like the Apex scandal, which I believe showed a systemic attempt by senior leadership to inflate graduation rates. And I don't mean the House principal, Shadia Alvarez. I wrote an article at the time, why Shadia Alvarez, meaning what motivation would a low-level administrator have for orchestrating this big scheme?
Bob, isn't that, if I may, Bob, isn't that a roast that's still cooking? We still haven't heard the end of that, have we? The Apex investigation?
Well, I mean, we've heard nothing. I don't know what's going on. Believe me, I've been asking. I foiled the state. I went to BOCES, which is involved in that. I've been to the school district. So no, we don't have any information about anything that's going on. But I know this, there's no way and there's no reason why a House principal would be orchestrating a scheme like this. Okay, I can understand, and I believe personally that the principal and the superintendent were involved. They did it because they wanted to artificially inflate the graduation rate so they could put that on their resume, that they quote unquote solved the achievement gap in New Rochelle. And by the time anybody had to deal with the reality that they were artificially inflating the graduation rate, they'd be long gone into the next job. And I filed a complaint to that effect with the U.S. Attorney's Office a couple of years ago. So we have that issue. Now we have the Adolfo Muhammad thing, which we can get into more. But I just look and say that, this thing has to be dismantled. Our leadership has been terrible across the board. And we're at the point now where we're literally hiring people from the bottom of the barrel. We're hiring for senior positions from people from Brooklyn, Newburgh, East Ramapo. We're getting people from places that are really some of the worst school districts in the country. And that's who we're hiring to come work here. And I have my own experience with the new school business official. I would describe him as slow as molasses in winter in getting anything done. He's been basically blocking my FOIA request from January and shows no intention of changing that, probably until the fall, because first they were claiming the budget was a reason, and then they were claiming that coronavirus is a reason. But the reality is that they haven't been providing information. The media inquiries, they're ignored. And of course, readers will know that I wrote quite a bit about the dangerous setup with the food distribution. I was asked to write a report as a member of the Health and Safety Committee on March 17th. And to this day, I've never gotten a response. To this day, never gotten a response. Something I was asked to write about how dangerous the conditions were at the food. And I will add one other thing. The mayor put out a statement the other day about why there's certain levels of coronavirus in certain parts of New Rochelle. And he put out a list, which I found laughably absurd. He said that it had to do with housing and then that residents being in essential jobs and things like that. But three of the six were really ridiculous. More residents with pre-existing health conditions that intensify vulnerability to COVID-19. Well, there's no evidence that pre-existing conditions intensify vulnerability. They will make people more sick who get it, but they won't cause people to get it more. In fact, children can get it just as easily as 80-year-old people. And two of his other reasons had to do with being illegal immigrants, that people are lacking documentation, that they have language barriers that get in the way of them seeking help. Well, that doesn't make any sense because you're talking about testing results and you're saying that they're not getting help. Well, they're getting tested. So what are you talking about? And then lastly, he talks about we have more residents in nursing homes where a single case can spread quickly. But as you know from your conversations with Anthony Galletta, we haven't been testing people in nursing homes since March 21st. So there is no testing data from nursing homes. So none of the charts that he's putting out here have anything to do with these things. And what he's ignoring is the rather obvious one that we've had thousands of people going to these food distribution points where they are not embracing mitigation methods, and they haven't been since I called the school board president on 17th.
Bob, am I understanding you right that they're still not practicing the right social distancing and mitigation efforts, even as we speak?
No, they after my article ran, they took steps to make improvements, but it's not consistent. I go by there from time to time, and sometimes they're doing something and sometimes they're not. My number one recommendation was to put a school nurse in charge of every facility, and also to stop using partner facilities for school food distribution. Use your own schools. The New Rochelle School District is by far the largest employer. They're the largest property owner, and they happen to own 10 buildings that, guess what, Bob? They have cafeterias, they have kitchens, they have food service workers, they have security guards, parking lots, driveways. Okay, so why on earth would we be sending people to something other than a school to get food provided by the school when we're already set up to serve? Where were these kids getting the food before the coronavirus? At the schools. So why wouldn't we be using them? Anyway, I think that the mayor deliberately chose to ignore that. I mean, I don't think that the reason that people, think about it, it doesn't even make sense, right? That the testing shows that all these people in the 108 and 10801 and 10805 zip code are getting the coronavirus more than the 10804 and 10538 zip code in the North End, right? So he's basically talking the South End and the North End. But the test results have nothing to do with language barriers or lacking documentation. In fact, if that were true, right, and I would address this to the mayor, no, if that were true, then actually you wouldn't see the test results because the people you're talking about would be staying away from the testing centers. So how does that even make any sense? And again, the nursing homes haven't been testing anybody for going on 2 months. So they're not even part of the data. So this is baloney from the mayor. Okay. And I believe that in large part it's meant to deflect from the fact that this ridiculous food distribution operation has actually been spreading the coronavirus more effectively than anything else.
Wow. We're talking with Bob Cox, managing editor, publisher of Talk of the Sound. Bob, based on all the different things I'm hearing, I'm just getting the gut feel now that, quite frankly, and this is my own judgment, they did not vet the superintendent. They did not vet him. This should not have happened.
You mean the principal?
Yes, sir. That's, I mean.
Okay. Yeah. So we're halfway through our hour. So yeah, let's spend the rest of it on Adolfo Muhammad.
Let's go.
So insert break here, and then let's move into phase 2 of this discussion. So for the listeners who haven't been following it, again, you can look at the show notes for the links. But
and also refer them to your articles as well, Bob, because your articles are rich in information.
Right. So the first article I did was about Adolfo Muhammad's Instagram account. Then I did another one about his Pinterest account. Then I did another one. Actually, I did 2 separate ones about interviews he gave to an editor for the Amsterdam News newspaper. Okay. The first one raised questions about his connection to the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad in particular, the quote unquote prophet of the Nation of Islam, and Leonard Jeffries, who was a professor at CUNY, who's, well-known anti-Semite. There was also a connection in there with the Black Panther Party. But the second article was about the Pinterest site, which was far worse than the Instagram site in terms of what I saw there. But in particular, there was numerous references to a guy named Franklin Jones. He never talks about Jews, running the media and Jews running Hollywood. He just talks about white people running Hollywood, white people running the media. But people might confuse that, saying, oh, well, so he's not anti-Semitic because he's just talking about white people generally. No, the real reason is because his view is that white people who claim to be Jewish are fake Jews, that the only real Jews are, that white people who claim to be Jews are fake Jews. Okay. That the only real, I'll explain, the only real Jews are black. Okay. And that white Jews stole the black Jews' heritage and all the rest of it and their religion and co-opted it. And that's really the idea of the Black Hebrew Israelites, which that name may ring a bell because adherents of that group were involved in the shootout in Jersey City. They were involved in harassing that kid down in the Lincoln Memorial over his hat. They've been in the news quite a bit, and not every sect of a group of that sect is violent, but there are violent sects within that Black Hebrew Israelite
Bob,
group.
I'm tempted to say this, but so I won't say it as a statement of fact, but I will question it this way. Does either history or science verify this? I mean, I know of the Ethiopian Jews and they're black, and there are elements, I do believe, of Ashkenazi Jew, but I don't. But where does this? Is there any science or history for this? I'm tempted to say there is not, but I didn't think so.
Okay.
Right.
These people are nutcases. Okay, let's
no
not
kidding.
dignify
Yeah. Okay. All right. But I had to
okay.
ask that question that way. Go ahead. Continue, please.
No, okay.
I'm wrapped.
All right. In any case, so I watched some videos of Franklin Jones, and I read his website, and I read excerpts from his book, and it's a lot of virulent anti-Semitism and basically anti-white generally rhetoric, and it applies to the Catholic Church and it applies to lots of different things, but that this is basically a belief system that holds that black people were the original man on earth, and that the devil, Jacob, as they call him, created the white man as a devil. And so you have good black people and bad white people, and there's all sorts of variations on that, but that's the kind of stuff that Leonard Jeffries talks about. It's the kind of stuff that Franklin Jones talks about. And this kind of stuff is replete through their writings. And my question for Adolfo Muhammad is, why are you putting up links to Franklin Jones's website, The Black People Matrix? Why are you promoting excerpts from his book? Why are you promoting things that he describes that aren't specifically from his book? But I would say that, so 7% of his pins on Pinterest, if you know how that works, you like bookmark an image.
Sure, yeah.
7% of his pins on Pinterest, when I looked at it, were specifically Franklin Jones quotes and links to his website. And then probably another 15% were illustrations of concepts in his writing. So about a quarter of what he had up there connected to Franklin Jones's notions of the white devil and Jews as fake Jews. And so to me, I have a question about that.
Well, no kidding.
Like,
well, let me
me
just back up a little bit for our listeners' sake. This isn't, when President Obama had met Bill Ayers in a meeting once, or at least as I understood it, this may be not totally accurate, but you get my point. And of course, for political reasons, said he's buddies with Bill Ayers and he's a piece of, a radical. We're not talking about this. We're talking about somebody who posted adherence to or some sort of allegiance with these ideas. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, I can just tell you what I saw, which is that
ahead.
in his social media profile, he's wearing a T-shirt with a picture of Elijah Muhammad and the cover of his book. I see a picture of him in his school on Black Solidarity Day with what looked to me like to be members of the Nation of Islam based on their appearance. And then we've got this Franklin Jones stuff and, a lot of other, really bizarre stuff on his social media. So I would want to ask a question about that. Now, I'm going to tell you that, and some of your listeners know this, okay? The school board responded publicly last Tuesday to my reporting. I don't know if you're aware of that, but
No, I was not.
There was an attempt to have a coordinated response to my reporting that involved the three Jewish members of the school board. I believe that this was orchestrated by the board president, who has a history of micromanaging things like this, Amy Moselli, who's Muslim, and maybe for that reason didn't want to get her hands dirty on this, but it fizzled a little bit because one of the three chose not to participate at all, and the other one kind of went in a little bit different direction. But the vice president of the board, who has a history of being a lapdog for the board president, attacked me, saying that my reporting reeked, that was his word, of racism and Islamophobia. That was a public statement, prepared statement during the school board meeting on Tuesday, which, by the way, they still haven't posted the video of. That seemed to be a view that was endorsed by other people on the board.
Wow.
Now, it's almost like not wanting to dignify that, but it's the kind of thing you do when you're desperate. Okay, but if that's the response to my repeated efforts to ask questions, to interview Mr. Muhammad, to give some sort of explanation, to offer them every opportunity, is that they're then going to ignore all that and basically hunker down, which is what they did. And then if I then go ahead and report, and remember, my articles are just pointing out what's there. It's like blaming the flashlight for what it
I
uncovers.
understand.
So,
in fact, you could have been, quite frankly, Bob, you could have been, had you been wired that way, which you're not, you could have, from what you've said here, you could have not mentioned the Nation of Islam and simply spoken about the stuff that he aligned with the with the black Israelites, and it would have been a safer course to take, but it wouldn't have been totally open and honest. And
Well, I don't know about safe or unsafe. I just know that
no,
Iran
because what they
stories
did is they
basically
clearly, and from what I'm hearing, what they did is they hung their hat on, see, there's an anti-Muslim streak in this because you mentioned Elijah Muhammad. And that is unfair, and that's cherry picking. But anyway, continue.
Well, first of all, I don't consider Elijah Muhammad a Muslim. Okay, so that be that as it may.
No, understood.
I mean, but if you want to get into bed with Louis Farrakhan,
Well, that was my point.
And your Paul Warhead, who was the president of Temple Israel for a period. He was the president of, I think it's called like the Westchester Jewish Council. And your response to perfectly legitimate questions that the community has an interest to know the answers to is to accuse the person who's reporting that of being a racist and an Islamophobe. I mean, it's so silly and so offensive. What it really highlights is, I think it's kind of proven out now that Paul Warhead is a fool. This guy's not very bright. He's lazy. And he's willing to just do whatever he's told because he doesn't really want to think for himself. And I see that time and time again, but let's just go to the issue of Islamophobia. Here's how dumb Paul Warhead is. I don't believe, and there's ample evidence to support this, that Adolfo Muhammad is a Muslim. I know his name is Muhammad, okay, but if you check, okay, in Muslim culture, Muhammad would be a first name, not a last name, number one. And number two, Adolfo isn't Islamic name. It's not Arab name. It's a word from Ghana. It means warrior. And so he chose a name that he himself said, his name was Ron Butler. He said that was his slave name and he replaced it with Adolfo Muhammad. Okay, fine. That's great. But it doesn't make him a Muslim. Now, he does refer in one of his Instagram posts to Allah, okay? And he does make other statements that sound like he's talking about Islam, okay? But everything else he's talking about relates to something called the 5%ers. And I believe that that's actually what he is, that he is a part of the 5%ers. This is a fringe breakoff group from the Nation of Islam that was founded in the 60s out of the same mosque where Malcolm X preached. And people can go do their own reading because we don't have time to get into the whole story about what the 5% is about, but they are a fringe of a fringe, okay? And they have some really radical ideas about the world that I would say are totally incompatible with the whole idea of diversity and community in the New Rochelle school system. And the fact is 5%ers are actually racist and anti-Semites. So the odd thing is that why would Jewish board members in New Rochelle feel the need to defend this guy and attack me, and in particular the accusation of Islamophobia, which is ridiculous. And I think, like I said, I believe Amy Moselli is behind this. Okay, she knows perfectly well that that is a scurrilous, despicable, untrue charge. She knows that my son is living over in Saudi Arabia, that his friends over there are all Muslims. I've been over there many times, and I would be willing to bet that I've been to more Muslim countries than Paul Warhead has ever been to, because I've been to Egypt, I've been to Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Indonesia, been all over the place, okay? And certainly been in a lot of mosques in all these different countries. And so the idea that it just shows that they have no legitimate defense, and they're trying to deflect attention away from the fact that they screwed up. And they should have never hired this guy. Obviously, let's put it this way. Either they didn't do even a cursory background check, or they did. Either they knew about all this stuff or they didn't. if they did and they still hired him anyway, what does that tell us?
I got a question for
didn't
you, Bob.
know,
But
What does that tell us?
you and I both know. In fact, you're reasonably close with Mark McLean, the head of the NAACP, and someone who wanted color in some of the leadership of the school. And I understand why. Has he spoken to you about this? Has he taken a position on this?
Well, I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay. All right. But no, only because there's someone who I think would defend you on this, but because this doesn't seem to have anything to do.
I don't need anybody to defend
No,
me
I
on
know that,
allegations
but
of racist or Islamophobia. All I need to do is point out that Paul Ward is a fool, okay, and unable to do what you I think any reasonable person would expect, which is answer the damn questions. It's simple. Why are you associating yourself with the Nation of Islam or Elijah Muhammad or the Black Panther Party or Leonard Jeffries or Franklin Jones? I mean, just tell me why. That they didn't. Nobody ever said anything about it. They've never addressed it, just like they don't address a lot of things. Well, at some point, you have to conclude the reason they're not addressing these questions is because the presumption behind the questions are true, that he is actually an anti-Semite, that he is actually a black racist against white people. He really does believe that white people are the devil and all the other things that he's associating himself with. I mean, you wrap yourself in the garb of all of these different people, okay, and you look at what these people stand for, and then you have to say, well, so what do you stand for? And if he's not going to answer the question or questions, I think then that it's reasonable to conclude is that because he doesn't have a good answer. Because in fact, you know, if it looks like a duck, right, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay. The fact is that, and I'm going to go to a different question, and then I certainly want to jump to R. Kelly and Kim Kardashian because we can't not mention them.
Go ahead, Robert.
But you know, like I said, I mean, he has, I think, an affirmative obligation, and so does the district, to address these questions. I think that you know, they should have reasonably anticipated these questions, or they just didn't, you know, do their due diligence. I've tried to explain to people there's a reason for that, which is that the teachers union and other unions in New York State are vehemently opposed to school districts going outside of the normal lanes of evaluating a candidate. They only want them to look at what's in their file from their jobs, like let's say in his case with New York City, or what's in any kind of state record. But a school district like New Rochelle doesn't get access to his background files. I think people don't understand that. In New York State, only the city gets access to a background check file. School districts like New Rochelle, all the rest of the state do not. So we had a guy that was hired as an assistant superintendent, Freddie Dean Smith, a number of years ago. A guy was hired with a felony conviction, a recent felony conviction, okay? He got his license in New York State while he was on probation from endangering the life of a police officer, felony conviction in Virginia. But White Plains, New Rochelle, Mechanical Hills, places he worked, never got a copy of that file. I got a copy of the file. They never did, okay? So they didn't even know. So I don't know what this guy's background is. All I know is that under state law, whatever background check was done was a criminal background check only. And it was done years ago when he was first granted an administrative license by New York State. And yet, how hard is it to type in a person's name in Google? But I'm pretty sure they don't do that, okay? They clearly made a mistake. Now, that doesn't stop individual board members from doing a Google search, but how could you bring in somebody and not ask them questions about this? And maybe there's a good explanation, but I'm long past the point of believing that there is. I believe that it is what it is, which is that he is in fact associating with these anti-Semites because he supports their views.
Now, there's a human resources department. Is there not at the school district? Don't they do background checks? Don't they vet?
Well, I
guess I'm saying that rhetorically.
In this case, they also had a headhunting firm recruiting the candidates. So you would like to think that part of the file would be, and oh, by the way, here's his social media, here's some of the interviews he's given, okay, that kind of stuff. But I'm just telling you, I don't think they do that, okay. But however it came to light, okay, his position was not defensible. Now I'm going to tell you, I told you about Paul Warhead, okay, who I'm just going to write off as a despicable human being, okay. And oddly, a Jew defending, in my opinion, defending an anti-Semite, go figure. Then there's Julia Magia-Ox. She's another board member, okay? And she mumbled something during the school board meeting, but then she published on Facebook a link to an op-ed piece from James Baldwin from 1967. It was in the New York Times. And in a nutshell, the headline basically says that, of course, Black people are anti-Semites because Jews are white. That was like the headline.
Oh, good grief.
I'm paraphrasing. But now, it's a very long, very nuanced article, and James Baldwin, of course, is a great writer, and he doesn't take a direct line to it, okay? But the punchline is, at the end, is, well, Jews don't really hate, Blacks don't really hate Jews as much as they're envious of Jews, because white Jews have been assimilated by white Christians as white. So even though Jews are still looked down upon by Christians because they're Jews, at least they're white. Blacks don't get that benefit. They're just Blacks. They're at the bottom of the totem pole. And so it's not that Blacks necessarily hate Jews, it's that they're envious of Jews, and that the real enemy is white Christians. Now, it's a very long, nuanced article, and I understand the point that he's trying to
Sure
make,
is.
and I think that Julia probably understands the point that he's making. But you have to get to about you have to read about 1,500 words to get to the point. And I'm just telling you right now, the headline is what's going to jump out at anybody who sees it. And what it's really saying is that a Jewish board member is basically defending anti-Semitism by Blacks as justified. And all of this is in a community where we've had 20, I'm going to say hate crimes, but swastika and other hate speech incidents at our two middle schools and our high school. This has been going on for 2 years. The district has taken no concrete steps to address it because they're not looking at where these incidents occurred. They're not looking at the camera coverage, not reviewing videotapes. They're not stationing security guards anywhere. They're bringing in people to talk about the Holocaust, okay? But that doesn't actually address the swastikas being drawn on school property any more than it addresses the false fire alarm poles or the alleged sexual assaults that have been occurring at the high school, because we don't have enough cameras. That's the whole security issue. But that's something the board can do, is demand maximum coverage of cameras to identify all of these incidents in real time. But they're not doing any of that. And on top of that, now you've got Jewish board members defending anti-Semitism. It's just, to me,
it is mind-boggling to hear it. Hey, so tell us about, let's close with your stories about Kardashian and Mr. Kelly.
Well, in R. Kelly, he was being interviewed about his, just a pop culture discussion about who his favorite artists are. And it came out that he had gone, this is 2017, in July and May, R. Kelly had done a concert out in Long Island near where Duffel Muhammad lives, and he and his wife went to the concert, and the conversation came up, and the host, a woman, was talking about R. Kelly being a bad person, et cetera, et cetera. And it came down to, well, what did he do? What did he do? And the woman said, well, the allegation, remember at the time, this was in the news, is that he was keeping these young women, under his control. Okay. And so she said that. And his answer was, well, how old are these women? And there was two in particular in Chicago, but there was more in Atlanta. But of the two that were in the newspaper, the host said 18. He said, well, then they're women. And he said that R. Kelly is the Black Hugh Hefner. He's a rich man who's flaunting his wealth and keeping a harem. So you can make of that what you will, Bob.
Wow.
You have to really wonder why someone like that would be running a public school. As far as Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, Doc got into a discussion about old Kanye and new Kanye. This was 2017 again. So this was in the year that he had like his whole big melodrama where he had a kind of a meltdown on stage. He talked about whether he would have voted for Trump. His fans were very upset. There was a number of other incidents where he was not showing up at different events and canceling concert tours and all this kind of stuff. And so that got into discussion of, like what happened to Kanye West. He was such a great artist and now he's gone off the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, Adolfo Muhammad starts talking about how, they're talking about the Kardashian family and the impact on him. And that's when Adolfo Muhammad says that the man has to be the center of the universe and that the man can't, the man has to be the master of the woman.
Oh, my.
So, that also gets into more of the 5%er stuff. If you read the last article that I wrote, you can readers can go see, sort of how, and I was going to write more articles, but it became unnecessary because he's gone. But if you take it all together, the association with Elijah Muhammad, the Leonard Jeffries, the Nation of Islam, Franklin Jones, take some of this other stuff that's up on his social media sites, it all folds back into the 5%er philosophy. And that's why it's important for people, especially dum-dums like Paul Warhead, to understand what the heck they're talking about. He's not a Muslim. He's a 5%er. In fact, 5%ers don't believe that Muslim is even a religion. They believe that the black man who is among the 5%, the quote, God body, unquote, the enlightened people, of which Adolfo Muhammad, I guess, considers himself one, they are individually Allah. They are God. Well,
wow, okay.
You don't have to be a theologian to know that is antithetical to everything that Muslims believe. They don't believe that an individual person is God. And it kind of flows from there. So my suggestion would be that, name calling by board members, especially trying to undermine legitimate journalistic questions, isn't the issue. The issue is their own failure, their own incompetence, which has been demonstrated time and time again with the lousy hiring, the lousy process, and the lousy communication, which is why I go back to this point, Bob. The only thing left to do is to, figuratively speaking, blow the whole thing up and start over. And that means that you bring the state in, and that means you defeat the budget. And this year's budget is particularly ripe, thanks to Governor Cuomo, to fall because every single voter in New Rochelle is going to get a mail-in ballot. That's 40,000 plus ballots. And I'm going to tell you, the more people vote, the bigger the defeat of this budget. And I don't want to just see it go down 50% plus one. I want to see it go down in a convincing way, and I'm going to do what's in my power to defeat it, just like I worked to defeat Echo Bay, just like I worked to defeat the bond vote in 2015. I'm going to work to defeat this, and no, it's not about sending a message at all. Not about it. It's about you all need to go.
Thank you so very much. Bob Cox, Managing Editor, Talk of the Sound. Considered the source since 2008. He's the editor-in-chief, and the editorials are his. Read it, look at it. You can get all of this information and those detailed stories there. Bob, thank you very much. Bob Cox, again, Managing Editor, Talk of the Sound. That pretty much slams the lid on everything for today. We're going to take a look at our sponsors and thank them. The law firm of Payne & Com, Aging Issues Management, the Beachmont Tavern, pluginvirtualreality.com, and our friends at United Hebrew. Tomorrow, don't forget, we're going to be talking with the man you love to hate in Mike Edelman. The man, well, some of you love to love him. Other people on the other side of the aisle love to love my friend Mike Duffy. Some of you don't, although I think he's terrific no matter what you think. I like the guy. Also tomorrow, let's see, who do we have tomorrow? We have a busy schedule. Sean Patterson, Howard, Harlan Ullman, all that coming up tomorrow. I want to thank the guests today, every single one of them, Bob Cox especially, for his very interesting reporting on the school district. We'll see you tomorrow. 10:04.
Some are saying, yeah, we'll extend it to June 1st. Others are saying, no, you have to pay it on time. Others are saying, well, we'll give you an extra week. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We've got a conference call scheduled later today, of our governing body to make a decision on it. But it's one of these stupid things that these politicians put out there just to make themselves look good.
Well, that's like Cuomo's tax cap here in New York. That is 100%. If you talk to any apolitical public servant, for example, the city managers that we have, they're furious about the tax cap because it's fake. It's only there to make the governor look good because what we have are these mandates, correct? So the governor will say, you have a 2% tax cap. By the way, here's a mandate for you, which would exceed the tax cap.
Yeah, well, state governments are wonderful for unfunded mandates.
Yeah, that's what we
that
have.
means that they require municipalities to do things, but they don't give them the money to do it.
Yeah.
And then you say, where do we get the money? And they go, I don't know, it's your problem.
Well, it's the financial dynamic of what I was talking about before you came on the air, where governments now are going to try and paint everybody else. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. It was a mouse in a lab. It was the lab. It was the Chinese developing a virus to kill us. It was this. It was everything is about blaming somebody else. Why? Because we're the pawns and they think we're stupid. And they're right, by the way.
Well, I think that, when it comes to China, I think that, they got to answer for Santino. I mean,
no, they do.
Have to,
I agree.
They've got to be made to pay for this whole thing because it was their fault. However it started, whether it's these wet market things or it was a lab or whatever, they started it, and they need to be made to pay for it. The other thing that I think this whole situation points out is, this global economy has shown us that being dependent on other countries is a recipe for disaster.
It is, but that's the way the world's going to be, though. It's Ronald Reagan was right, though. Once capitalism requires interdependence, I should say. Vin, there's no way to get out of it. I mean, what are you going to do? In some way, I have a $250 hockey stick. If it wasn't made in China, it'd be $400.
Well, maybe we need to have ways of either making things more economically or doing things differently. I think Trump is going about it the wrong way. Threatening more tariffs against China because that's silly. All it does is pass on that cost to the consumers. If people want to take action, what they should be doing is sending an email to all of these companies that do business in China and say, hey, guess what, pal? You make stuff in China, we're not buying it.
I understand it. I understand the sentiment, but how I feel and the realities of economics, I agree with you if something needs to be done. I just don't know how. And that's been the president's conundrum. He's wanted to go after China. I think he made a mistake with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but he at least has been very forthright about China as a problem. Now, when you say punish China, what do you think they should do? The president is looking at ways to punish China, although I keep thinking, who's going to punish us? But what do you think he might do? What do you think? But I don't mean what he might do and speculating what he might do. What do you think he ought to do?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I would say you stop buying stuff from them.
It's tough to do.
I mean, yeah, it is. Well, it's because these companies are making money because the economies are different.
Yeah.
They're making money because they pay people a nickel an hour over there as opposed to $25 an hour here. And, we're never going to be able to compete with that. I mean, Tom Friedman was always famous for the world is flat. We've got to learn to compete. There's no learning. If they were paid the same as we were paid, then you could compete with them, in terms of quality, in terms of innovation, and all that. But when you have such a disparate economy that one side gets paid 5 cents an hour and the
Yeah,
other
well,
side gets
that's
paid
but you know, but that's
$25 an hour, there's
again.
no competition.
I'm not Tom Friedman, and I'm not an economist. But what one of the good things about capitalism is that it shows weaknesses in the value of things. For example, it is arguable, but on a global scale, we were overpaying people. Now, I'm glad we did. I'm probably one of the people they overpaid. We were probably overpaying automobile workers. We were probably overpaying factory workers. But then again, you get to in our economic system where where the labor unions, they gave up a wonderful edge they had by overreaching. But without unions, people were starting to make garbage again, and that's what's happening again. The disparate nature of our economy now is scandalous. I mean, we've got people working at stores where they have to be on food stamps anyway, and they can't have health care. There's something tragically wrong with that. And AOC people aren't the answer at the other extreme. But
Well, that shouldn't be.
Getting back to
Go
your
ahead.
original premise, though, what happens when you or your mayor pick up the phone and say, "Hello, where do you want us to get this money from?" Do they say they don't give a spit, or do they say borrow it, or they say "F you"?
They don't. Well, I'll give you a parallel example. They many years ago in New Jersey, they had what they called the Mount Laurel decision. Mount Laurel is a community down in central Jersey.
Yeah, I know where it is.
And the decision was that every municipality had to provide affordable housing. And they came up with all of these methodologies to figure out how much you had to provide. And so, fast forward to present day, our municipality, we are in what is called the Highlands Preservation Zone, which means that you can't have any kind of development because of the watershed. Now, it's not water that we use. It's all water that goes down to Newark and Trenton and all those places. So, we have to suffer because we got to supply water to them. So along comes there's a group that sues literally every municipality and says, you got to have affordable housing. And so we go to court, and we say to the court, well, we're in the Highlands Preservation Zone, and we're prohibited from any new development. We can't build anything. So how can we provide affordable housing? You know what they tell us?
What? That's
your problem.
Yeah, I know. We have this issue up here in Westchester too. Believe me, in spades. Your alter ego, Anthony Galetta, is an expert on that stuff. He can wax and wane about it. It's incredible, and I don't know where we go from here with this. I really don't. But I do hope your municipality tells them to go screw themselves. I really do.
I mean, that's what I'm going to advocate. I'm going to say, yeah, what are they going to do? Are they come and arrest us?
You got a corporate counsel, right? Tell them to.
Oh yeah, sure.
Tell them to dig into the law.
But Bob, anytime you deal with lawyers, they look for the most conservative.
Yeah, they play
way
defense.
Out.
They play defense,
and
absolutely.
They're always saying, them and accountants. I can give you a classic example of that. When I was managing a small company, we had a situation where the state of California wanted us to collect sales tax, and I won't go into all of the nitty-gritty
eyes will
details.
frost over. Go ahead.
And the our auditors said, oh yeah, and we had like Coopers and Lybrand. I mean, a big firm. And they said, oh yeah, you guys have to do that. And I'm going, no, it doesn't sound right. I mean, it sounds crazy. So I literally called up California. They had an office here in New York, a sales tax office. I called them up. I explained the situation to the guy, and he said to me, well, if it's what you say is accurate, he said, then you're right. You do not have to collect the sales tax. And I said to him, will you send me a letter to that effect? And he said, sure. And he did. I showed it to the auditors, and they said, well, we think you should collect it anyway.
Oh, please. Yeah. Well, that's why people in government need to have a spine. But again, politics, unfortunately, in the 21st century is a game of deception, dissembling, and doing impossible things and then blaming somebody else for them. That is the system, I'm afraid. Vince, you stay safe, you stay well. Master of Public Health. We'll be talking with her. That's interesting. When Vince was talking about the way politics works there and what they have to do, but you see, there you have, folks, the great paradox. We spend a lot of time on this program and many others because openly we have our beefs with the president or we have our beefs with the governor. But there are always so many sides to a story. Here we have a Democratic governor over in New Jersey saying these wonderful things and sticking it to his municipalities. And by the way, I sent some stuff around to some listeners yesterday. Nancy Pelosi was on with Jake Tapper last week, and then she was on with Bill Maher. She embarrassed herself, she embarrassed the Democratic Party, and she embarrassed the institution of politics. There are a couple of local legislators who can do the same thing, which is to say, talk for 10 minutes. One of them I don't put on the show anymore. I'll never say who it is. It's not right. But they never say anything meaningful, and they only want to talk about what they want to talk about. So you can say, oh, Congresswoman, or whomever the case may be, what do you think about what those airplanes spotted when they were looking at the UFOs? Well, Bob, I believe that the price of bacon in Argentina is essential. I didn't ask you that. And then they don't shut up and they don't take a breath. And they wonder why the people are nuts. All right, 7:35. I look forward to our next guest. The young woman is so many things. She's the managing editor and publisher of the Westchester County. Oh, there's so many Westchester County newspapers, but the WestchesterCountyPost.com. She has a master's in public health and does many things in the public health field, both in her journalistic career and not. She is a videographer. She's also a jazz singer, figure, and God knows what else. Good morning, Janelle Albritton.
Good morning, Mr. Marrone.
Mr.
How are you?
Marrone, I like that. Very good. We're all trying to get our hands around these stories, Janelle, where they talk about herd immunity, and B, antibody testing. What does all this tell us?
How much time you got?
10 minutes, 15 minutes. But in a nutshell.
That's easy. All right. Which one do you want me to start with?
Herd immunity.
Herd immunity. Okay. So the numbers vary. They talk about herd immunity where you've got at least, I think it's 85 to 90% of folks who are vaccinated and or have had a disease and have developed their own antibodies to it, right? So the chances of getting infected are very slim. And even if you do get sick, it may or may not, it probably won't be very severe. We don't really count a lot on herd immunity nowadays with the push for vaccinations and immunizations. So herd immunity has not really been as much in the conversation until more recently, when people started having issues with the ingredients of vaccinations containing things like aluminum and thimerosal, which I do believe are linked to issues, health issues in children. So I'll tiptoe gently around the edge of that.
Say we can do a whole show on that, because in the best of all possible ways, I don't have your background in public health, but from the people I talk to, we probably disagree, but we'll do that at another day because it's a worthy topic. But that said, what is the nature of it? What does herd immunity mean? Doesn't it also mean, for example, that enough people have died for it and the virus has worked its way through the population, so now a lot of people are immune, let's move on? It's Darwinian, actually.
Oh heavens! I've never made that connection in my head about putting herd immunity as part of culling the herd.
But it is,
But
it's a fact of life, which I'm not
yeah,
happy to say, but nonetheless, so you finally have herd immunity. But is that really essentially what it is? I mean, again, leaving vaccinations out of it, herd immunity is when enough people have had the virus and or carry the antibody. So statistically, less people give it to less numbers of other people, and less people get it. Ergo, it just becomes another bug.
that's the general idea. I'm
Okay.
still stuck on the part where you said either they die or they.
No,
I'm
because that's in the
still
abstract.
processing
No,
that.
I know, but that's in the abstract. But now something else that you would probably know a lot more about. One of the things I heard Fauci yesterday talking about this, a viral load. Now, if you and I were living
Yeah.
together and I have the virus, you have a huge chance of getting it. If I see you once a
Yes, my
week,
chances are higher.
yeah, but why is that?
Yeah.
Is it that because we have an increased likelihood that you get it, or is it because there's a greater viral load? You actually get more virus that enters your system.
Okay. Well, I would fine tune the phrase viral load. Viral load has to do with the actual amount of viruses in one's bloodstream.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Okay. So that's not to be confused with exposure to someone who's infected. They're related topics, but not the same thing. So the viral load is a very important factor because if it's too low, the test is not going to pick it up.
I see.
So, for example, it's the same concept where when women take a pregnancy test,
Mm-hmm.
they read directions. It says always take the first morning urine. Why is that? Because the pregnancy hormones accumulate during the night in the urine,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to get a more reliable test result with the first morning urine, because that's when the pregnancy chemicals are highest in the urine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
So
interesting.
it's a
I
similar
see.
concept with viral load. If I just got infected yesterday or the day before, the virus may not have had enough time to multiply to the level that the test can pick it up. So that's what we talk about, the sensitivity of a test.
Interesting. Well, my guest again,
So,
Janelle Albritton.
yeah.
She is a master's of public health and has worked in the field for many, many years. She's also, and we'll get to the part that she's a newspaper editor in a little bit. But of all the things that we read, and again, because of the nature of what I do and the doctor shows that I do, I'm compelled to read a lot about it. There are a lot of aspects of this virus that are baffling. There's some of the neurological symptoms now.
Yep.
The fact that some people are affected because of clotting and they don't know why.
Yep.
And the viruses,
Yep.
and you may know more about this too, to seek out the protein of ACE2, I guess it is. It's a protein in the body that is used often to control vascular health. What confuses you the most? I mean, these things are coming out of left field, like from all over the place. What do you think? What? And again, it's
Well,
a fresh
this is-
face on it. What do you think?
Well, I've been reading a lot about this, and it's pretty alarming that it kind of fulfills what Anthony Fauci said was his, worst nightmare of a virus that's easily communicable, highly virulent, attacks the respiratory system. I mean, that's really the perfect storm of a viral infection, because the one thing we need for, minutes at a time is oxygen. So when something goes straight to your lungs, it's a top level kind of priority to address it.
Mm-hmm. And what about? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One thing that I'm really concerned about this virus is that I have been reading the various symptoms that different people have, and I'm seeing it in my mind. It's more like HIV in the sense that it mutates easily, and there are so many variations of it. Last I checked, there were up to 20 variations that have been detected. So that makes creating a vaccination for it very difficult, number one. Number two, when you have different symptoms, it makes it more difficult to diagnose the patient as having this as a root cause, as an infection. So the difference between a disease and a syndrome is that a disease has a very specific profile of symptoms. And so when you talk about a physician ruling out different diagnoses, they're looking at the symptoms and they're saying, well, if you have this and this and this, that doesn't fit that disease. It fits maybe these other diseases. And so they try to, troubleshoot and figure it out, take blood labs, etc. With a syndrome, and this is why AIDS, the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, the S in AIDS stands for syndrome. This is because the symptoms of the infected patient vary so much. So it could be like, imagine going to a restaurant and there's 50 menu items, and each guest is going to order different items from the same menu. So no one single table looks the same. That's the best example of a syndrome. So to me, it's, and I haven't read this anywhere. I haven't really tried to dig it up or research it yet, but it seems to me that COVID, instead of calling it COVID, so CO stands for corona, VI stands for virus, the D in COVID stands for disease. I'm wondering if we should change it to COVIS, COVIS,
syndrome.
To talk
Well, as
syndrome instead of disease because of these things.
As you well know, the interesting thing about HIV is that it's the window that it opens for other things to get you. But what we're seeing, it's dissimilar, but again, the secondary issue here has been this cytokine storm where the body now attacks you so virulently that it kills you. And that's what happened.
Yeah, it's so we get, and I'm sorry about your friends, and I just I just learned last week about the death of beloved coach Fred Gallo. He had a history of heart disease, but we all know someone. I think so many New Yorkers now know at least one person personally who has died of this. So this comes to the main message I'd like to deliver today.
Please.
This is more about maintaining a strong immune system, and I've been saying this on your show.
Yep.
And I've been researching some good resources. I will talk more about this in the future, but for now, I'd like to refer people to a really great website.
Please.
drbrownstein.com. Dr. Brownstein, BROWNSTEIN.com. And he's been in practice with his group in Michigan for over 20 years. And he's basically cracked the code as a, holistic practitioner to help people have strong immune systems. And his message to the world is, look, this COVID thing is going to pass us by. All these viruses, H1N1, SARS, bird flu, all that stuff, even Ebola, as scary as Ebola was, it goes away eventually, right? We've got to manage it well, but nothing lasts forever, which means there's going to be something new coming. So get ready, boost your immune system, and support the host rather than attack the pathogen. That's really his basic message. You've got to support the host and make sure that that your body, that your immune system is strong enough to handle whatever comes along. And he has not a single patient that has died or been intubated with this COVID crisis in the last few months.
Well, I was did a little. You're on to something there, because I know that one of the things that even Fauci says is you got to do the things that really contribute to your immune system, like getting things as simple as getting enough sleep, eating the right foods, getting exercise. So yeah, you've mentioned Brownstein before, and I looked up some of the stuff, and it's all basic, solid stuff. Hey, listen, before we go to your colleague, how are things going with your newspaper? What kinds of stories have you been focusing on at the WestchesterCountyPress.com? WestchesterCountyPost.com. It's amazing.
Good job. Good job. Well, it's I won't be going to print for a little while. It really does take a lot of capital to do that, and I'm still getting my team together with the digital platform. But I'm happy to say that between Steve Callis and Anthony Sortolini, I'm very excited that the sports section is robust and fun and exciting, and they just spent over an hour last night shooting one continuous video, which Anthony will chop into pieces and upload every few days. A lot to talk about in sports, surprisingly. For no games going on, they find some really interesting things to discuss.
And I got a list of them here, and I know he waits for you to finish, and then he calls right in. So we will do that next. Janelle, right. Two things. A, stay safe. B, thank you very much for weighing in on this most important issue. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe. Janelle Albritton, everybody. She is the managing editor and publisher of... I almost said the Yonkers Tribune because I'm losing my mind. Of the WestchesterCountyPost.com. Coming up next, Steve Callis. Well, I see we have a caller. We might be able to squish that in, I think. But let's get to... In fact, let's just be sure, since I work alone, that we have on the phone. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester. Stephen?
Steve Callis.
I thought so. Stephen, wait right there. I got to do a little weather report, and we'll be right with you. It is 7:50 on the Smackaroo. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. And some thunderstorms today, 65 degrees. It's 48 right now. It's going to get up to 65. But tonight, things will start to clear up. 51, mostly sunshine tomorrow. 71, you got to like it. 53 at night. You can sleep with shorts on, or nothing for that matter. Sunday, partly cloudy, 74 degrees. If we get more sun, who knows where it'll go. 56 at night. On into Monday, 66 degrees at night, 46. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And let's go now to our guest. He is, of course, the editor, the sports editor for the aforementioned WestchesterCountyPost.com. He's on the Philly Fanatic radio station on a regular basis. He is been a writer, broadcaster, videographer of sports for many, many years. He does podcasts, and he is a regular contributor to this broadcast. Please welcome Steve Callis. Stephen, good morning, sir.
Hi, Bob. Great to be with you as always.
Oh, it's always great to have you. I can do a bunch of different things. I can go everywhere with you, but I thought I owed it to our football fans out there who we want to keep happy. Your take on the draft, your take on the Gronk going to the Buccaneers, etc. In fact, let's start there. Everybody loves to talk about Tom Brady. What did you think of the Gronk coming out of retirement, and will it really give them a shot at going far in the football playoffs?
Well, I think it gives them a shot. I mean, they're in kind of a tough division now with the Saints are the Saints. They find an incredible way to lose every year in the playoffs, but it seems like they're 13-3, every year. So that's going to be tough within the division. But I certainly think they have enough to get a wild card. I don't know if they can, they just re-signed Ndamukong Suh, who may not be the dominant player he was a few years ago on the defensive side of the ball, but he's still really good. And I think Gronk is a huge pickup. Gronk really was kind of spent mentally and physically, according to him, after they won that Super Bowl. And my son, the Patriots fan, I know, poor parenting, really thought that they were going to call him midway through the season last year and bring him back. But if that happened, he obviously said no. But he said he'd never play with any other quarterback but Tom Brady. So I think this is a little surprising, but not shocking. But I think that makes them a better team, and I think they'll be in the playoff hunt. I agree with you. I don't think they're going deep. But, they're in the right conference now. You don't want to be in a conference with the Chiefs and Mahomes, and here come the Ravens
with
Lamar Jackson. So I think that's the weaker conference now, and I think they can make some noise. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. As for the draft, it's kind of interesting. Other than the three quarterbacks in the top six picks, which you kind of knew was going to happen, it was interesting that in the first round, the biggest story was the Packers moved up from 30 to 26 to draft a quarterback, Justin Love, and everybody's going, well, hold it, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, what about that?
And I think Justin Love to the Packers is what Jimmy Garoppolo was to the Patriots. I think than he's ever had, not just with Gronk, but with Goodwin, and Mike Evans is the best receiver in the NFL nobody knows about. And they have another good tight end unless they trade him. And he's playing 8 games in Tampa Bay, not New England. So I think getting Justin Love is like for 3 years from now. The problem with Justin Love for me is a lot of people thought he apparently has the best arm in the draft, but a lot of people thought he was a second day pick. And he threw 17 interceptions for Utah State last year, Bob, which made him the #1 intercepted passer in the whole FBS football bowl subdivision. That takes up a lot of room. And he was also, his completion rate against man coverage was like 45%, which made him the 8th worst in the country. So there's question marks there. Then in the second round, you probably know the biggest story turned out to be the Eagles, who gave Carson Wentz 4 years and $128 million. They drafted a quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who was the quarterback at Alabama, and then he was replaced by Tua when they won the national championship. And then when Tua got hurt, he came back. Then he transferred to Oklahoma. He was second in the Heisman last year. He threw for 32 touchdowns and 8 picks and rushed for 20 more. So he's more of a Taysom Hill type. At least that's what they're pitching, the guy from New Orleans. But I just don't know. A lot of people are saying, for example, the Packers, why didn't they get a wide receiver to give him a weapon? Because there were tons of wide receivers in the draft in the first round. And the same with the Eagles. They have so many other needs. Why did they take another quarterback? And, the answers to those questions remain to be seen. I always say we should do a draft show on the draft 3 years ago, because then we know who was right and who was wrong. Now you're just kind of reading tea leaves or guessing.
Now, Justin, what in God's name is New England going to do for a quarterback?
Well, apparently they're very high on the Stidham guy, the guy who's been the backup to Brady last year. He, again, according to my son, the Patriots fan, played great in the exhibition season, whatever that means. And then his limited appearances didn't go so well. He threw that pick 6 against Miami. I know all this stuff, Bob, because I'm required to watch all Patriots games, as you might imagine.
Yeah, you poor
But as
thing.
opposed to just all the Giants games, which I watch. But that's kind of a poor thing too if you're a Giants fan like I am. But in any event,
Wow.
I just don't know what's going to happen with all these guys. They're in trouble up in New England because they lost a lot more. I understand Tom Brady's Tom Brady, but they lost Van Noy and Jamie Collins on the defensive front seven. They still have the best secondary in football, but their front seven isn't very good. And outside of Edelman, who do they have for weapons? I think that's one of the reasons Brady left, because they didn't get him anybody as of the day that Van Noy and Collins left, and Brady announced the next day that he was leaving, and then, whatever it was, 3 or 4 days later to go to Tampa Bay. So I think the Patriots are in trouble. I understand Bill Belichick, greatest coach ever, et cetera, but he's going to have to do it with smoke and mirrors this year, I think, because Devlin, his fullback, just retired. He had that neck injury. So the reason they were the best running team, like in many years, 2 years ago when they beat the Rams, they had Devlin, the fullback, out for the season. Andrews, the center with blood clots, out for the season. Gronkowski, the best blocking tight end, had, retired. So that's why they weren't that good last year. This year, I think they're going to be worse.
Wow. My guest is Steve Callis, a broadcaster, the sports editor of the Westchester County Post.com. You listen to him on the Philly Fanatic, his podcasts, his videos that he does post on the Westchester County Post.com, as well as his, I should say podcasts. I almost said blogs. What about our Giants and Jets? Take it home for us. How did they do in the draft?
Well, I think they did okay, but I think I still think they're both far away, especially the Giants. The Giants 2 years ago, Vernon, Jack Rabbit, all those other guys. They just kind of got rid of the four best players. Snacks Harrison. They just kind of got rid of their four best defensive players 2 years ago. Either they traded them or they didn't re-sign them. And then I thought this year, I understand you have to protect Daniel Jones. I'm not convinced that he's the answer. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. Hard to tell after 1 year, but he was a turnover machine with interceptions and fumbles, just kind of the double whammy for the quarterback. So they got the big offensive tackle. Okay, that's fine. You got to protect Daniel Jones. You got to open up holes for Saquon Barkley. But to me, they've done very little, if anything, defensively. And I think they're going to be in for a long season unless they can score a ton of points. And I just don't think they have the weapons on offense. Barkley's great, but I don't think they have the weapons to be real good. For the Jets, everybody's telling me Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback. I don't know how you feel. I'm not convinced of that at all. They lost Robbie Anderson, their best receiver, to free agency, so I don't know where that leaves Sam Darnold. They don't have, whatever you think of Le'Veon Bell, either the offensive line isn't good enough or he's just not Le'Veon Bell anymore like he was with the Steelers, because he was okay at best last year. And he's got that gigantic contract that I think Adam Gase, the coach, said we really don't want that contract. But you can't trade that contract because running backs, to me, are still undervalued. When Ezekiel Elliott runs well for Dallas, Dak Prescott looks like a $30 million quarterback. When he doesn't, Dak Prescott looks like a fourth-round pick. So I think the Jets and the Giants have improved slightly, which by definition you always do after the draft. Your first or second-round picks are usually going to be key starters right away. But I don't think they did enough, certainly for the Giants, to make noise against the Eagles or the Cowboys. And the Jets, you tell them, everybody, it's wide open now, Tom Brady's gone. But, Buffalo's real good, almost beat the Patriots last year. I think they're the solid favorites in the AFC East.
By the way, we just got joined, and we're going to say hello to Jake Schaefer, who joined the conversation. Jake, good morning. I want a couple of other questions, and then we'd like to get you in the midst of this. Jake Schaefer, of course, does production for us and is our sports guru. In fact, here's my next question, and it does involve you. Jake, say good morning.
Good morning.
Can you
Good morning.
Good morning. I have all my pals on the phone, and it brings me to my next item. There is going to be tomorrow a virtual Kentucky Derby. And first of all, but before we even ask what you both think of it, Jake, you know this. Will people be able to bet on it?
Of course, you can bet on anything these days.
No, but you can. But
I believe it's.
But are they going to know the outcome, or is it going to be run by a computer? Do you know?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Jake, can you hear me?
Yeah, you broke up there for a second. I believe there are some gambling websites. I'm not sure if you can do it on the FanDuel or DraftKings, but I believe that you will be able to get your money down on the virtual race tomorrow.
What do you think of that, Stephen?
Horse guy, I think it's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Look, we're bet. Some people will bet on cockroach races if you televise them. So I understand that they need something to have someone to bet. I was trying to find out, Jake, if you could bet on the horse competition last week, because after I saw the first day where Conley could shoot easily with both hands, I was like, wow, this guy's going to win. But I don't know. I never lost. I rarely gamble, and certainly you'd have to be, again, half a degenerate to bet on virtual Kentucky derbies or horse competitions where, one guy's indoors and the other 7 are outdoors in the rain or the cold. But again, you know this, Bob, and you do too, Jake. There's a market for whatever you can put out there to bet. There's a market, and
exactly.
I think if you went to FanDuel, that would be where you'd find the true degenerates now.
Well, do you know what, Steve? You're talking to the market when we were joined by Jake Schaefer. All right, I want to move on to something else. NASCAR has said that they're going to get back in business on May 17th, and I don't think. Well, who knows? They've got a lot of people in the South are running around with assault rifles saying, open up the government. Maybe they will show up, but do you think they'll have butts in the seats?
I don't know about that, but the thing that is tricky to me is how do they get the pit crews all together? Because they're all jammed in there together. They're working on the cars. Do they all get tests? Do they check their temperature? I mean, the drivers will be fine. My first question was, what do they do about the pit crews? I'm sure they'll figure out something, maybe half fill the tracks, but it'll be interesting to see how they do that. My thought is that golf should be able to come back very soon. NASCAR I just don't know what they do with the pit crews. But fans, that's another story. I don't know what they're going to do about allowing people into the tracks.
What do you know
letting
about
them
it,
sit.
Stephen?
I think you got to be extra safe. I mean, we don't want to go political, but the notion that you're going to have I even heard the president the other day say, "Oh, I can't wait to go to a football game when there's 80,000 people in the stands. I don't want to go when it's every fourth seat." But I think right now, and you heard Fauci say, I'm a Washington Nationals fan and I want to see baseball games this summer, but they're going to have to be with fans. So I'd be shocked. Jake makes a good point about pit crews and NASCAR. But, for example, if they play baseball games without fans, you can't have 20 guys in the dugout. You can't have 10 guys sitting on that little bench. So I think they might be sitting in the first two rows until they have to go out to the bullpen, and then it's going to be limited people out in the bullpen. But I think all of these sports, and again, where there's TV money, Bob, it's worth it to all of these sports, and the main sports, so it's certainly worth it to NFL, MLB, etc. But I think they're not going to be with fans for a long time. And even if they say, we can ask maybe Jake this question, even if they say, oh, yeah, it's okay to go to Yankee Stadium or Madison Square Garden, are you going? Because I'm not.
No, I'm probably not. So, particularly at my age, being slightly older than the both of you. Now, you both mentioned baseball, and one of the things that's been troubling about baseball is every week we see a new postulate. For a while, they were going to have a league in Arizona and another league in Florida. Now, today comes word that they're going to just have teams play in their home ballparks, which... whose home ballparks? Because somebody's always got to be visiting. What do you guys know about this? So let's start with Jake.
Well, the latest I heard, they're breaking the teams up into three divisions of 10 teams, all in, you'll have the Mets and the Yankees in the same division, all the teams, closest together here in the East, and then the other divisions just geographically, which I find fascinating. And the ideas that I've heard about, the umpires, possibly the computerized strike zone. It just sounds exciting to me. I heard that this Thanksgiving, you might have your football Thanksgiving Day, and then World Series Day. But it just comes down to testing. I think it's just all fun to about and reflect on, but I have no one knows what's going to happen.
What have you heard,
I am
Stephen?
slightly confident that baseball will happen.
What have you heard, Stephen?
Yeah, the latest baseball plan is pretty interesting to me. 3 10-team divisions, as Jake said, no American League, no National League. The ones that, we would talk about in New York are Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, Phillies, Nationals, Pirates. That's not all of them, but that's just of them. And I think it's probably a good idea from a travel perspective, Bob. I thought the Arizona plan was no good. And once Mike Trout came out and said, hey, look, my wife is pregnant. I'm going home when she has our first baby. When I come back, do I have to be quarantined for 14 days? And a lot of guys balked at spending 4 or 5 months in Arizona, especially if they're from, the East Coast. So the playoff thing is pretty interesting, though, to me. If it goes as planned, as Jake said, it changes like every other day, it seems, or you said. And that is the top 4 teams in each division would make the playoffs. You'd have 12 teams in the playoffs this year. And the 4 highest winning percentages would get a first-round bye. The 8 other teams would play 4 wild card games, one and done. And then you go back to the way it was, 3 out of 5 for the first series, 4 out of 7 for the next 2, including the World Series. They expect/hope, this is all based on, as Jake said, testing and some recovery, but they hope to play 100 games. And if you tell me I can get a 100-game season with no fans, I'm thrilled at that. I'd watch anything on TV now.
Okay,
I did watch the horse contest, for example.
I won the horse contest. Boy, oh boy, you guys and horses. I hate to brag, but anyway, if I may, one of the issues I think baseball is going to have, and you both touched on it, hockey is already. I was checking out some